Just so everybody knows, on November 19th, we are going to be hosting an active harmer drill at Lyons Middle Senior High School. And it's a non-contact day for students, and it'll go from about 8 till 1. It's primarily geared for the upper staff of St. Vrain School District to practice their ICS skills in a major event at the school, work on student-parent reunification, that kind of stuff. So there will be a lot of activity over there, but it'll all be training, and I have a press release waiting to get sent out, so I'll send that throughout the town as well, so everybody knows. We'll have some training signs up and whatnot, but we're putting the final touches on that big training. I'm still currently working on my end of the year report for you guys. I should have that real quick. Just trying to get some finalization on some stats on cases and tickets and things like that that have come through for this past year, and put that into a summary fashion. And then over the past weekend, we did have a couple vehicle trespasses in town. That case was investigated, and we did identify 2 suspects, so we are clear of that case. And then we are currently investigating the graffiti over at Laverne Johnson Park. So those are the only 2 things that are kind of hit my radar for what's going on in town. Other than that, everything's good.
All right, any questions for Sergeant Chris?
How did drug take-back go?
It went well, actually. This time, I think we had 38 people, which I think is a pretty high number for Lyons. And we really saturated the advertisement on that. We hung up a lot of posters. We also stretched out to Allen's Park and Riverside and some of the mountain communities, knowing that they come through here. So it actually went really well, and we probably got about 5 or 6 trash bags full, and 38 or so people came in with a lot of stuff. So thanks for bringing that up, because that was this year we only did it once, where we usually did it twice, and it just seemed like we'd get half a dozen people at a time. So maybe once a year is the better way to go with it. So, and we still have the kiosk at the headquarters in Boulder, throughout the year if someone doesn't want to wait. So it went well.
Thank you. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll turn over to staff for staff report, and then we're going to show a short video.
We're almost there, but I'll go ahead and, oh no, it is here. If you want to just get the one furthest away, that would be awesome. This is a video. Oh, there it goes. Just warming up. Kim. There it is. Oh, it's not. This is a little video, just 2 minutes long, that is a kickoff to the, or it's not officially paid for by the Tourism and Marketing Grant, but it is another mechanism that actually a videographer donated his time to put this together for us, and it's a great little video. Do you need sound?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's right. I've got this one.
We did budget for a new sound system.
We had another one come today that was, oh my gosh, it was amazing. But I need.
So do we. I don't know whose that is, because it's not mine. Is that anybody else? Well, why don't you mess with that, and I'll go ahead and give the rest of my report. How's that sound? Yeah. Okay, messes with that. For the flood recovery update, I'm just going to highlight some of the projects that are currently really in an active phase. First of all, being the Public Works building, we did have to, due to some inconsistencies in bidding, we had to rebid the building number 1, which is called the replacement building. And it is now scheduled to be reopened on November 7th, which is also the date of the pre-bid meeting for the operations building to go out for bid. So it is moving along. If you get the opportunity to go out and look at the site, it is really coming together. It is graded and has its base down and really taking shape out there, so it's pretty exciting. McConnell Bridge, just want to let you know that we have submitted $1.3 million for reimbursement from FEMA, and that should be reimbursed at 100%. So we always get Anna and I get a little nervous when our bank account gets under $2 million for the town. So we're looking forward to that reimbursement coming in. Second Avenue Bridge we're going to talk about as a separate item tonight under general business, so I will touch upon that. Bone Park Phase 2. We did get the Section 106 cultural report completed, submitted to FEMA. They came back with like 6 questions, and those have been resubmitted. And then the environmental assessment is currently in review by town staff, and by the end of this week will be submitted. And then working on the contract revision with Walsh Construction. But we are really hopeful that that project can get up and started here in the next month or so. The Northwest Utilities, which are the Apple Valley Water Line, we are working closely now with Longmont and FEMA to coordinate that project. The design and permitting is currently in process on that, and efforts being coordinated, like I said, with Longmont to get that started in the spring. And it looks like our little video is ready behind you. That's not the beginning though.
Fingers crossed, everybody. Really, the AV specialist here.
I hope you can hear the music, because it is wonderful.
Takes a lot to listen.
You have to just listen.
Lions, a great place for me to spend my time, especially in the off-season. I love it here. Good morning. And a tea coffee after a while. Run the puppy. Oh.
Hi, Santa, good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good morning. How are you? Oh, wonderful.
It's your coffee.
Bless you. Thank you. Good morning. Hey, good morning. You got something? Oh, wonderful. Oh, smells wonderful. Thank you. You see the eagles up there in the cliffs, the river. The children love to play in the river, in the water. I like to play in the water. Oh, I love this place. It is so peaceful. All right. Thank you very much. See you later. Yes, this is lovely. There. Milk and cookies, just what I need. Doesn't get much better. Oh, Lions, I love it this time of year, but I can't wait to get back on the holidays. That'll be wonderful.
Isn't that great? That just went live, and I think in the first 48 hours, we had like 5,000 hits on it.
Nice.
So we will send this out to you guys. Send it out to families and friends. Get them excited about the season coming up. Invite them to come to town for dinner. or the parade and going out afterwards or something. So that was a free video by, actually it was a classmate of Ariel's that knew she was working in this department, said, I'll do that for you guys, and I did it for her. So that was awesome, and just kind of a fun little project. Shows off Main Street well. Okay, the rest of the flood recovery update. The wastewater treatment plant. Part of the wastewater treatment plant, to finalize that project out with FEMA, is the extension of the sewer outfall, if you guys recall that. And Roberts Construction is now to a point that they are ready to install the outfall pipe along the banks of the new ponds. But we don't have CDPHE approval back yet. So they are asking for some direction from the board. They can not put in the pipe, and then when the ponds are done, come back and rip out that bank and put in the line. Or we put it in, knowing that if, we won't connect it, of course, till we have a CDPHE approval to do so. But we could put the line in now, and take, again, that risk that potentially they would not approve the outfall. Now, this is a project that we're doing, again, in conjunction with Longmont. We both have some skin in the game here. And so this outfall project is a total of about $110,000. And so it's not the whole line, it's just the section that needs, the pipe that needs to be under pond 1, the westernmost pond's bank. So Roberts asked, they asked me if they should move forward or not, because they're at that point to shape that bank. And I said that was something I probably need to take to the board tonight, so they are waiting for us to give them a nod tomorrow, if possible, on whether or not we should do that or continue with the pond and come back to it.
What's the timing and the likelihood of the CDPHE permit?
You know, that's, we have lots of things in it, CDPHE, so, you know, I don't know how they prioritize their work. We were hoping it would be in before they were ready, but it usually is about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks. It's different departments. It's really hard to know. And they have held off as long as they could on that westernmost pond. You know, they've been working around it, doing other things, so. I think the high, and this was listed on, when we met 2 weeks ago, this was on your high-risk list as a potential, that if we do the work, there's a small chance it wouldn't be approved. But again, I think with Longmont and Lyons both being involved, if they don't approve it this round, we would still want to go back and find out what they didn't like about it and try to, you know, keep working with CDP.
Mr. Curtis,
I'd rather just go ahead and put it in and leave it, I'm disconnected. I hate to see us go back and tear up through something we're paying for. It's just, what's the cost if we put it in and they don't like it? Is it a layout? Is it where it actually comes out of the ground? What would be
the whole outfall extension is, of course, to take it from being in front of Longmont's water intake and move it downstream so it's below their intake. And so there's really no reason. I mean, they approved the funding to move forward with the project. It's just technically, you know, we don't have the formal approval yet for the water to flow in the pipe.
But if the pipe's there and we get that approval a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, it's already there. We don't have to tear up what we've got planted, what's growing.
So we know it's a project CDPHE supports, we just don't have the
They support it
paperwork.
and Longmont supports it, and it's in everyone's best interest, I think, to do it. It's just a matter of timing. And like I said, it's one section of the extension.
So does that mean it's also one section of the total cost?
Yes. I don't have that number with Jim Blankenship being out right now, but knowing the whole project is 110, and this is like 200 feet of it out of almost a half a mile. I can't imagine it's more than 30,000 or so of pipe.
And that would be likely shared with Longmont.
Yes.
Has Longmont
They
given
know.
an opinion?
They know, and they already have an agreement with us to share the cost of this project, whatever's not covered by grant funds, so they are aware of this situation.
But I mean, have they said that they would have, that they kind of lean one way or another?
They have at the staff level, I don't know if they need to take it higher, they haven't indicated that.
My guess is this is a pretty immaterial dollar.
So that would be done.
I guess my sense is I don't think that there's a high risk that this would not be funded, and I hate the idea of doing work twice. So my sense is I'd like to see staff proceed, the board's agreeable. Actually, lots of hands now.
All right.
Roll the dice.
Roll the dice, okay.
Go for it.
So that's, that project can now move forward. And the East Corridor utility development, which is the sewer line going out to the East Corridor. JVA did complete their report. I think I reported on that last time. And it is also at CDPHE awaiting approval of our BOD limits being re-rated or not to allow for additional sewage from the Eastern Corridor. So that's the status of that one. And then we are hoping to hear back from HMGP. We actually thought we'd hear by then in November, so it should, or October. So we think it should be any time on the 3rd and Park Pedbridge on whether or not we can use HMGP property for the abutments. And as soon as we get the approval on that, that would be a spring-summer project to put the bridge in. But that is also awaiting their final approval. And we are like at 99% of closeout for the acquisitions and buyouts. And then that whole project can be filed away. And that leads me into my staff report, which is Wednesday of this week, HMGP will be in Lyons and visiting 18 of the buyout properties. FEMA had purchased 18 of those. They are coming out to make sure they'll physically do a drive-by to view that all of those properties are in compliance with the deed restrictions. And so upon our preparation for that monitoring visit, we found 4 properties that someone was using or are using to store their own personal items on. So they have been served notice to have those removed, and if they are not removed by tomorrow, we will be removing them on their behalf. And we are expecting that to be a really positive visit. All of the buyouts look quite natural, so we're hoping that will go well. Fire hydrant testing has begun. You might have been hearing that there are we're working with the fire department on retesting our entire hydrant system. There's about 140 of those hydrants. We have completed the first 10 or 12 that were in the permit system waiting for approval. So we are coordinating. The fire department wants to be involved with all of the testing, so it's coordinating our staff and theirs to be there. And then there's been some requests about dimming lights in the park, both parks. And so we are kind of setting the tone right now that a half an hour after sunset, we will be turning off the parking lot lights. We'll only be remaining on lights on a building or along the trails. We started trying this out last Friday, and the first night we did it, we got tagged all over in Johnson Park by graffiti. So we may need to step up presence after hours in the parks in the meantime. But we are hearing from people they don't want the lights on, but again, it's a security issue for us as well. So hopefully that was a one-time thing. Those are the primary highlights. Lions Valley River Park Ponds also, if you recall, there was the state engineer was reviewing our excavation measures in that area, and all that's been approved and in writing, so everything's fine. Excavation is in full force out there. you've been watching, there's about 10 trucks in constant movement out there.
Well, I just wanted to commend the staff on the closeout potential for the buyout properties. So getting to closeout is not a small deal on these major projects, and it's been a very successful program for town, I think, and for the landowners, and just thanks to Tracy and the whole grant team for all their work on that. That's really a big accomplishment, so thank you for all your work.
I actually got a phone call just last week from Colorado Springs saying, how did you do this? We haven't closed out any of ours. And they were saying, is it unusual for it to take 15 months to hear back? And I said, oh no, that's a year and a half. You can plan on that to hear back on each of the properties. And so thank you for acknowledging that. It was to close out 28 properties, which I think is the most in the state. The county and Lyons both had about the same number. To have that done successfully with our monitoring visits will be a huge milestone for us. Yeah.
Have a party or
Yeah.
something. So thanks again.
Mhm.
All right.
Could I ask a couple
Yes,
questions?
trustee.
Town administrator's report included a couple of things about the housing. We've kind of gotten,
Oh, Summit?
yeah, bits of information. I've kind of lost track of the overall deadline. Are we still under a September 2019 deadline for the $4 million grant?
Yes.
And the site plan and development plan applications, they haven't actually been filed yet, or have they?
So the status on Summit, it's in my written report. I noticed that we forgot that off the last couple of meetings, so we'll get back on there. The update on Summit is that they have met with both Division of Housing and with CHAPA. They will be submitting their application for 4% tax credits by December 21st to be reviewed in January, awarded February. In the meantime, they're starting to work with Paul on submitting, working through what the site plan process looks like. So the 11 single-family homes will move forward as a primary use for those lots. Tract A, which will be 10 buildings consisting of 29 units, will have to go through a site development review process with the Planning Commission and public hearings and all of the above. So that one will take a little longer. They have met with the fire department about the road and access, so they've started that. But they said that they left the meeting with both CHAFA and Division of Housing feeling very confident that they can expend the $4 million within a couple months of it being awarded.
And can it be awarded until they've completed the site plan and development plan review
The
process?
property just has to be under control, meaning they have to own it and have the governing body, just having the property under control, the basic entitlement process.
So they can go ahead and apply while the site plan and development, okay. And just to clarify, do they actually own it, or they just have a contract for it?
It's clarification with Summit. They were kept using the term that they had closed, and it was not. It was under contract. Closing will occur before the end of the year.
So they have under contract.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
With 2 extensions and for double backup.
Okay.
Right. We're going to go ahead and move on to audience business. This is a portion of the meeting where the audience is welcome to approach the board on items that are not on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. We do have 2 later opportunities for public comment. One is with the appeal by Bonita Yoder, and the other is around the Second Avenue Bridge discussion. Excuse me. So if you're here to speak to those 2 items, please hold your comments until those items come up on the agenda. Any other items that you would like to speak about are fair game. You can come up and give your name and address for the record. Each person will have 4 minutes. And just so you know, the ordinances that are on here for first reading, the public comment for those would be at a future meeting. So you can speak during audience business if you prefer. Right. Would anyone like to speak at audience business?
Yep.
Thank you.
I have to keep one because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh.
The other way, I'll give you the file. Pardon me.
Yes, and each person has 4 minutes, just so,
4 minutes.
4 minutes.
That's almost no time at all. I changed my glasses. I'm Craig Engelhorn, 727 2nd Avenue here in Lyon. I'm also one of the owners of Spirit Hound Distillers at 4196 Ute Highway. I'm here to speak on what's going to be first reading tonight, the ordinance 1042. I believe there's some other ordinance numbers, but specifically changes to the wastewater, I guess, ordinances, or what do you call it, municipal code 13-4. I've got some observations, some questions, and some comments, and just want to kind of give you guys a little bit of our business perspective on these issues. So in terms of my observations, so looking at the numbers, raising residential rates from for wastewater from $5.50 to $9.50 per 1,000 gallons, and commercial from 5.25 to 9.25 is a 73% increase in usage rates for residents for wastewater and a 76% increase in usage rates for businesses. Pretty large number. On top of that, a major portion of this ordinance changed the code to allow a surcharge for high BOD users. You guys may know about biological oxygen demand. I'm sure you've talked about this a lot. And those of us users who are high on the end of the scale are looking at a very large increase in our wastewater treatment cost. Spirit Hound, going through the last year, trailing year, we're looking at about 180% increase in our water and sewer bill. That means an increase of $8,000 or so based on our current usage on an annual basis, which is, for a small business, a pretty good chunk of money. Our last meeting with the Town of Lyons staff was in February of 2017. Few and far between on communication for this stuff. They gave us a little bit of information that said that our current plant was designed for a 705 pound per day BOD capacity, and at 80% of that, or 564 pounds per day, the state of Colorado requires a plant redesign. In the first half of the year, there was a bunch of data taken, and I found it on the agenda for one of the, I think, May meetings. It's in your packet here. 20 different days were sampled from January 11th through April 25th to get the inflow BOD numbers. And if you do the math and multiply that out, what I find is that the average of those 20 samples shows that the plant is handling or getting an inflow, I shall say, of 979 pounds per day on average for those 20 samples. Low on those 20 samples of 638 pounds per day and a high of almost 1,300 pounds per day, all of which are really pretty much over the design limit of the plant. So my questions are, given this ordinance change to the wastewater rates, the revenue's gonna come in at about a factor of 2 for wastewater for next year, or for the next following year. So is the town currently short by a factor of 2 in being able to fund the wastewater treatment? That's a solid question. $1.13 pound, or $1.13 per pound surcharge for BOD is higher than the average that I see, you know, in my unofficial Google search, but typically I see about a 60-cent per pound charge for BOD for wastewater treatment plants in various other states and Colorado. Does that mean my time's up?
It does.
Okay, well, you guys can read the rest of it.
Yeah, that nicely, so thank you.
There's all kinds of good data. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Anyone else for audience business?
Talk faster.
Can you pick up?
Go quick.
My name is Wayne Anderson. Got a couple businesses here in town on Main Street and Ute Highway 227, County Road 69. Just first of all, this is my first opportunity to stand in front of some of you new board members. Usually when I come up here, I'm bitching, so I hate to get the reputation, so I don't come that often. But I'm just trying to put a little context into what Craig has been laying out. Just from the layman's point of view, which is kind of where I'm at. He's on the scientific, break it down, and all of the backup is there. But I can tell you that we've been in the center of this whole wastewater plant thing from the beginning, since the new one was built after the flood. Both at the distillery and the Lions Fork. I first started hearing that there was an issue. You know, people, the distillery is a place where people come and they hang out, they talk about things. Sometimes people come there after work. Some of the first conversations we heard about it were from the plant workers at the new treatment facility. Like, oh man, how's it going, you know? And they say, it's not that great. And what do you mean? Well, it can't handle the capacity of what's coming in. Really? Wow. Yeah, it kind of sucks, but it's an issue. The plant's overwhelmed and they just opened it. This is like brand new, just opened this thing after the flood. Then after that, being up on Main Street with the Fork, the town actually hired a person, a contractor from some grant money, and to go around and to say, they're trying to figure out what's going on. The plant's not working, what's going on? Okay, it must be the 5 restaurants in town, the grease traps aren't working right. Something's wrong. So it became this thing of like whack-a-mole. What's wrong with the plant? It must be, you know. In the Fork, if we don't clean our grease traps, the place floods. You know, and there's grease all over the floor. So of course we're taking care of that. So it's like, what are you guys? So that was curious enough. That went on for a process of a couple of months. And in one of the conversations, and I don't know if Craig had this in his packet, but I'm going to add this to it for you guys. One of the conversations that I had early on with this town employee was about this document, which the town provided. Craig referenced our last meeting with the town in February of last year. And you know, just not being a scientist or anything like that, I'm just looking at this, and this is what they based the design on the brand new facility on. So as you can see, the orange line is all of our usage between 2005 and 2016, and the blue line is what they based the design of the brand new post-flood facility on. So you don't have to be a scientist to go, wait a minute, that thing's way undersized. Now, if Craig's numbers are right, which I'm willing to bet anything that they are, that 565 pounds per day at the bottom is really more like 980. So you do that, and now you're way upside down in the design of the facility at the get-go. So, and the lady, what I was going to say is even said, because I pointed that out, and she goes, well, so it looks to me like you need a much bigger facility. And she goes, well, that's not possible. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she said, well, we only had this much money to work with. So we couldn't build a facility that size to handle that kind of load because we only had this much money. So in my non-technical brain, I'm going, so they're designing a facility based on how much money they have, not on what the actual need is. And so I'm going, who approved that? And so I'll show it up right there, but just in context, as you're looking at this and all these resolutions, no matter how much money you spend on it, you can't fix it. You can't put enough Band-Aids on it to fix it. And so it looks like you're penalizing. You just got to look at the big source of the issue here. So thank you very much. I'm sure we'll be talking in open discussion and all that other stuff.
All right. Anyone else for audience business?
Hi, I'm Georgiana Pollard, 310 Fifth Avenue, and I have a quick question about fire hydrants. In July, we were very joyfully approved by the board for a detached ADU above our garage. And there was a condition placed on our certificate of occupancy, a condition that no ADU would be allowed there, and it has passed in July. And the condition was, therein said we needed to have the fire hydrant checked. And I believe we are one of the group of the first 10 or 12 that were checked. We're very happy about that. And we're asking, when can we receive clarification of that? Because we have been unable to start renting the building. And what kind of paper will we receive? Will we receive a new CLO with that condition removed off of it? Or that's kind of our question. So we'd just like some clarification from somebody who might know.
And since people don't usually come prepared for necessarily these questions, so we'll ask the staff to follow up with you.
That'd be great.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else for audience business? Okay, we'll close audience business and move on to our ordinances and public hearings. And we do have an appeal hearing scheduled for this evening. I'm going to let the town attorney talk us through a little bit of process before we go.
Okay.
There's no time now.
Yes or no?
We're going to have just the applicant come up first, and then you can stay close to the front if you want, and then we'll have you come up after she's finished.
Brandon Dimon, the town attorney, for those in the audience. I just want to point out that this is a special type of proceeding for the town code. It's governed by really Article 4 of the town code, which lays out the procedures for quasi-judicial hearings under certain circumstances, and this is one of those that is cited to in the code. You've been provided with an outline of those orders and procedures. I wanted to outline it for the audience and for the applicant who are here in attendance today. First, under these types of quasi-judicial procedures, there will be an oath administered to both parties. So an oath administered to both the applicant and the town's witness. There's also a very specified order of procedure. First, the applicant will give their case in chief about why the appeal should be granted in their favor. Then, the town shall give its case against granting the appeal. Then we shall hear from members of the public on their positions as to the appeal. And then we shall, the applicant shall have a chance for rebuttal for both from the audience, the items raised by the audience and items raised by the witness for the town. Finally, if there's an issue that the town has, it may have served rebuttal to the rebuttal of the applicant. And then in any sort of quasi-judicial proceeding, the applicant has the last word. And so the applicant will have the ability for the last word if there is rebuttal, which is not necessary. So that's the basic outline of procedures. If the board's wish, the applicant can now proceed with their case in chief. Oh, yes?
Yes, I'd like to recuse myself from this discussion because I've served as a lead for Lions Volunteers working on this property, and as such have had what could be considered ex parte discussions over a long period of time. In fact, I was in a sort of a quasi advocate role in discussions with Charles Abbott, which is the building inspector. So while I had no financial involvement whatsoever, but because of those factors, just for appearance, I thought it would be appropriate to recuse myself.
Thank you.
Yes, one quick question of the town attorney. Yep. If a board member has questions for either the appellant or the town people, at what point in the procedure should we ask those questions?
After each case is given. Okay. And so the appellant will give their case. When she is finished with her case in chief, you will let the opportunity to ask questions. The town will give their case with the opportunity to ask questions at each stage of the proceedings.
Okay.
Counsel, is there any time limit for either?
During quasi-judicial proceedings under Colorado law, there is no time limit.
I won't take over
Please don't
2
take it
hours,
all.
don't worry.
Oh, yeah, we need to get the oath, we need to get the oath before, and the clerk will administer the oath.
Can I ask a point of clarification? At what point do you want me to open the hearing and close the hearing? Do you want to open it now? Or do you
Open it
want
now,
to
please.
wait? So we're going to open the appeal hearing for Benita Yoder.
Ready, Bernita? Okay. So I, and then state your name,
I, Benita Yoder,
solemnly, sincerely,
solemnly, sincerely,
and truly declare
and truly declare
and affirm
and affirm
that I will tell the truth
that I will tell the truth
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
I'm glad you didn't make me swear.
I took that part out.
We're ready to begin?
Ready to begin.
Okay, I will turn it over
Okay.
to you.
May I use the podium?
If you'll take the microphone with you.
As long as, yeah,
Well,
if you can
oh,
use the
oh.
microphone too, so we can get a good recording.
Yeah, that does the recording.
Oh. Good evening, trustees. It's me, Benita Yoder, before you again, this time in person instead of by phone, as I was on August 6th. I'm here tonight to ask, actually to plead essentially for your help. If you go back to 5 years ago, we know there was a big flood in this town, and it was around Thanksgiving time 5 years ago. I remember being out, I think it was around that time, there was a Salvation Army tent. We had the big water, whatever it was, where people would come and get water. There were porta-johns all over town. In fact, there was one in the corner of my yard of my house for many, many months. I have neighbors here, I'm sure they remember that. Some people unofficially were living in their homes without certificate of occupancies. Some people, I understand, didn't even evacuate, even though the mayor generally told them to in the park. There was a use of generators, water-toted, porta-johns. People were just making do to get their homes back together. Now let's fast forward to where I applied for a FEMA grant after being told by Rosie Dannett not to apply for a building permit on my own because it would jeopardize FEMA grants. Because I had started to put in an application for a furnace, and she said, well, it turns out I used people in Confluence were recommending a Longmont contractor who, as it turns out, wasn't actually licensed in Lyons, although a number of people were using this person. So there was a slowdown in the permit. In order for that person to pay their fee and get licensed, they were insured. And then I was told, if you want to be eligible for FEMA funding, you need to pull that application. I did. I applied for both the 404 buyout and the FEMA funding. It was on a simultaneous path. When I was told I had to elect, I elected for the elevation grant. I always said I want to rebuild, that my last resort would be a buyout. I was consistent all the way along with that. It took almost 9 months to go from the verbal approval of my FEMA grant from February till September.
Ms. Yoder, I'm sorry, you have to just address the board, please.
From February till September, when I got a verbal approval of the grant, until the signatures from FEMA, DOLA, and the town of Lyons were on. That's how slow the bureaucracy moved. Many people here experienced it firsthand in the town, so that's not a surprise. This year, as you know, the FEMA grant expired due to a shortage of contractors in Colorado. It wasn't just my house that was affected, it was Scott Young's, it was a house in Jamestown and Niwot, I believe there were at least 5. The towns could not find any contractors. There was a shortage of contractors. Contractors had booked way out. The grant expired. I lost $175,000. Then it became my responsibility to move forward in putting my house at 401 2nd Avenue back together to make it livable. I applied for a building permit under my name. My first application was denied. I had some phone conversations with Mike Tyson, the building inspector. He said he wanted to have the rock wall removed, the vapor barrier taken out, and then the wall or siding put back in. I revised the application. It was approved. I think it took over a month from the beginning of that, around that time. It was approved, I believe, on August 24th. In my name. The building permit was approved in my name. On September 5th, I received an email from Mike saying that I had to be a licensed contractor and I couldn't proceed on work because I wasn't a resident or a licensed contractor. That email should be in your package. I'm just giving you the summary, not the word for word at this moment. Then, and also, September 15th, I received an email from Deb Anthony telling me that, or reminding me that nobody's allowed to live in the house until a certificate of occupancy was issued. Now, first off, I don't know that a certificate of occupancy was ever revoked, because I have not received any notice that there ever was not one. I think there was some kind of a tag on a door that went around during that, after the flood. I don't have a tag on my door now. I don't know, don't actually recall. And they had different colors, I think orange and green and red or whatnot. At any rate, I never received notice that anything allowing occupancy was ever revoked. So I was surprised that that issue came up. But I have two issues here tonight. One is that of an alternative for removing the rock wall at the front of the house. And then the second issue, well, actually, I think I have the first one as a resident. I'd like to address them in reverse order. First, I'd like to talk about the actual rock wall issue, and then second, the residency. It was suggested to me by a contractor that I approach the idea of spray foam insulation as an alternative to removing the rock in the front of the house. It's only on the front, that's not on all four sides. Removing that and then putting in like Tyvek or some kind of plastic insulation, and then either plywood or OSB or some kind of backing. And the reason I'm asking for help is because of finances. I didn't expect to be removing the wall. It wasn't anything, it caught me by surprise when that first came up by the building inspector, and it poses a financial hardship. Now, I suggested or approached him with the idea, actually I dropped off some information, I guess, at the town hall with specs of spray foam. And then there was an email on September 5th that denied that application, denied the use of that as an alternative. And that's the only alternative I'd like to talk about tonight. I don't want to talk about any others because that's the only one he actually denied at this point. In case there is something else that comes up, such as being able to go in from the inside, I haven't had a denial of that. So I'm only asking you to look at whether spray foam is allowed instead of, in lieu of, a plastic barrier and some kind of backerboard or OSB or plywood. And just, if I may, I apologize for not having this advanced. I took some photos today, printed them out at the library. I just thought it might help with a visual. May I approach to pass these around so you can each have one? It might help you. I think I've got one here.
And Ms. Yoder, did you provide one to the building inspector as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
There you are, sorry, you were in the back. I showed him one, but I didn't give it.
The clerk will need to mark these as Exhibit A.
Both as Exhibit A? There's
A
two.
and then B.
A and B, I'm sorry, I didn't know there's two. maybe applicants exhibit A.
Oh, can I have some of them while you're marking? Yep. All right. Take one of each.
I think just a copy of it.
Yes, I sure do.
I'll give them the checks. Comes next. Direct your attention to the larger photograph here. It didn't display as well what I wanted, so I also had the smaller ones. And what we're talking about here is the gap between the 2x4 framing and the rock wall. And if you'll see in this photograph, the one on the left, the 2x4 on the left, if you're holding it this way, if you look behind it, there's a dark area. That is fiberboard that was for some reason not removed by the people who actually removed the sheetrock when the basement was gutted after the flood. Most of the fiberboard was removed, and at the time the house was built, apparently this fiberboard was used for the gap between the 2x4 framing and the rock wall. But what we're talking about here is what goes in that gap between the framing and the wall. The requirement by the building inspector's office is that this whole front wall be removed, then plastic such as, or vapor barrier such as Tyvek plastic, if you're familiar with house wrap, that go in there, and then also some like OSB or plywood, which would fill that. So my request tonight is to allow an alternative such as the spray foam, which is applied with a spray gun. People come up with a truck and have a hose and a gun or pump and spray it into that. And my understanding is it has to be at least 1.5 inch thick to meet the therm requirement under the building code. But I did talk briefly with Mr. Tyson and Randy out front before the hearing, and according to what's submitted in my conversation, the vapor barrier is no longer an issue. The building inspector is satisfied with the foam from that viewpoint, but what is an issue is attaching it to the framing and the rock. There are, you can't see them here, but there are some, they're called ties. They look kind of like nails, spaced sporadically between the 2x4 framing and the rock wall. Actually, I call it a rock wall, but you see it looks kind of gray. That actually had some kind of, I think, a thin layer of mortar, or maybe it was mortar that was in the use of putting the rock together. Now, I've explored different options. I had a bid for the application of the spray foam from a contractor in Longmont, and that was around $1,200. I also had a local stonemason come out and look, and Mr. Tyson was gracious enough to come meet him, and that bid was just under $6,000, which does not include the replacement of installing new windows, which was his recommendation. If you're tearing the whole wall down, you ought to put in some energy efficient windows. So we might be looking at, I don't know, $7,000 versus $1,200. The third option that Mr. Tyson was talking to me about earlier was some non-rock siding replacement. I did try to get that bid. The contractor didn't show up, so I do not have that figure. Right now, what I'm looking at is a difference between around $1,200 and maybe $7,000. So, excuse me. So that's the first issue I'd like to have you address. And as I explained to Mr. Tyson before the hearing, the reason it got to this level is because his email on September 5th said to have, if I have any other questions, have a contractor contact him. After receiving that, I came into town hall and met with Deb Anthony a couple of times, I believe. And it turned into this appeal as opposed to ongoing direct communication to see if we could resolve it with some other alternative. But that's the one issue on whether a spray foam would be allowed instead in lieu of removing the rock wall and save, significant amount of money. Well, not if you're looking at roads and bridges, but just from a homeowner, to me. It's all relative, I suppose. Then the other issue I'd like to address is that of the building permit being in my name. I had some phone conversations with Mr. Tyson. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Is it Tyson?
It's Tyson, but that's fine.
TH.
Tyson.
Yeah.
Okay, apologize.
No
Just,
problem.
I don't know, something just said, ask if you're friend. At any rate, Mike, how's that? Okay? Okay. We had several phone conversations. We had talked about meeting at the house. I had previously met with Alan. Don't remember his last name, but he was in the Charles Abbott building inspector because Mike was, I believe, in Florida that week. Then subsequently, Mike came back. We had phone conversations about the application. I explained that I was in Kansas and I couldn't meet with him in person. At that point, we progressed, and the building permit, as I said, it was issued after a revision. Never anywhere on the application for a building permit did I see a question that said, are you a resident of the town of Lyons? Never was I asked by the building inspector, are you a resident of the town of Lyons? Now, it seems to me that if that is an important criteria on whether or not to issue a building permit, that ought to be a question on the form, or ought to be asked before the permit is issued, rather than attempt to rescind the permit after the fact, 2 weeks after the fact. In fact, I asked Mike sorry, before the hearing outside why he made a determination about the residency. He said, well, somewhere along the way you mentioned something about renting it. And I said, well, then why did you grant the permit? Well, I don't know. He didn't really have an answer. If he has something to say, he could speak to that. But my point is, I wasn't at any point trying to hide anything. I've been in and out of town hall a number of times over the years. I've been town hall meetings. I've been around town. People did know my situation, although there's been so much turnover at town hall that people who have seen me over the years, some of them are gone. But it should be on the application if that's an important criteria, and it should come up before issuing a permit rather than after the fact. Also, the requirement here in section 6.3.20, well, it's in Exhibit A, it's also in your packet, as a building structure or accessory structure shall be presumed to be a person's residence or intended for the person's residential use if that person occupies a dwelling a minimum of 1 year after the certificate of occupancy is issued. Okay. Let me think about that. If that person occupies a dwelling a minimum of 1 year after the certificate of occupancy is issued, I find this a little confusing. I don't know, I mean, maybe you can help me understand how, unless, for example, you have on staff, maybe you have a licensed FEMA-funded fortune teller who can look into a crystal ball and predict with 100% accuracy that somebody's going to be living in the house for 12 months. I haven't heard of such a person, but it's a confusing ordinance because you're determining residency based upon something that hasn't even happened yet.
Ms. Euler, for clarification, is that the building inspector's exhibit A?
Oh, sorry, it's my exhibit A.
Another exhibit.
Another exhibit A, different, okay.
Oh.
We mark this as exhibit B.
C.
C.
Okay, here.
Okay. It seems to me that the ordinance is written backwards, that you're determining residency based on something that's going to happen in the future. I don't see anything in the ordinance that says it's based upon something that's happened in the past, what, the residency status was of the owner at any time in the past before the date of the application. Likewise, I see nothing that says anything about what is the situation in the present. Is the owner occupying the house in the present? No, we're fast forwarding to the future for 12 months after the certificate of occupancy is issued. Now, this is literally the way the town interprets this ordinance. I don't know how anybody gets a certificate of occupancy, ever. Because how do you ever determine something? How do you measure it before it's happened? I mean, I could get run over by a truck tomorrow, even if I lived in the house and not living in it 12 months. Somebody could get a new relationship and move before 12 months. Or any number of things could happen, just as in the last 5 years since the flood, any number of things could happen. And a person, and it just seems to me that that ordinance ought to be changed, but that's neither here or there at this point in time. I just say, if that's what we have in the books, let's then turn to, in your packet, a letter from Mike Dyson, right, to the Dear Board of Trustees. I don't know if there's an exhibit number for that or not.
So, is this your, do you intend it to be an exhibit during your presentation?
Yes, I was just asked to give information to the
Staff's exhibit A.
over, so.
We call it staff?
Yep, staff's exhibit A.
There's no date on it, but it's the one that says Dear Board of Trustees. So I got this afternoon and took a look at it. And it says, at the end of this full paragraph under first appeal issue, after communicating with the property owner on several occasions, it is apparent to me that knowledge of the building codes and safe work practices are not sufficient to perform the work required. So I'll leave my personal reaction and opinion out of that statement, but I would like to direct your attention back to the ordinance, which has the definition of occupancy in Article 3, Section 6.320, definition of contractor. I do not see anything in that ordinance that says the definition or the requirement for issuing a building permit to a homeowner's name is that the property owner has knowledge of building codes and safe work practices. If it is in the ordinance, please bring it to my attention. I don't see it. But if that is a basis, if that is the town's basis for denying building permits in property owner's names, then again, if it's not in the ordinance at present, it needs to be put into the ordinance, if that is your intention. You may recall that during the phone hearing on August 6th, when I was here about a utility agreement arrangement, I said that I planned to rent the house for 4 to 6 months to pay the mortgage. And that has been a challenge, because I do have a mortgage payment on this house, and this has been over 5 years. Which is one reason I do not have ample funds just to write out a check for an extra $6,000 or $5,000 here and there for expenses. But that was on August 6th. So this is now November 5th. That's September, October, November. We have 3 months at this point. Another 2 months is the end of the year. I was trying to get past to the end of the year to get some things attended to in Kansas, where I have my home on the market for sale. But that was back in August 6th. That was a short-term proposal. Now that time is pretty much going to be passed by the time this is over. And I'm just here asking for your help, because if this project is contingent upon a licensed contractor, then that incurs additional cost. The requirement with, as it is now, for the rock wall is additional cost, unexpected. And the town matriarch has directed me to move here before she dies. I told her at this rate she's going to have to live to be 100. But at any rate, I didn't hear you. No, you were here.
Don't bring me up. I want to stay here and see this house done.
She was at her granddaughter's law school admission. I didn't know she made it back. So anyway, at any rate, I just need help in getting this thing to completion. It's the last house standing. It has not been put back here in Lyons since the flood. And thank you for putting up with me here this evening, as long as it is. I know you have many things on the agenda, and I'll turn it over to your next part.
That's what it is.
Okay. You can switch places.
Well, the questions that you or you know.
Benita, we'll have to have you sit back up
Oh,
there.
sorry.
We're up here with you.
We're gonna do some questions first, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's gonna do
Wait.
questions.
My apologies.
Oh, well,
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
Benita, sorry,
gonna
the
change
board
with
has
her.
some questions for you.
Oh, okay.
Thank
You
you.
move the microphone for me. Yeah,
All
okay.
right. The questions for the applicants.
I just have a couple of questions. What year did you buy the home?
Around, I think around 2000, with the idea that in the future, in my, I don't want to say later, in the next chapter of my life, I would be living here, because I wanted to buy it while it was still affordable. Before things, because I heard real estate was going up quite a bit out here.
Okay. So you've been living in Kansas up until this point and renting the home up until the flood? Is that what?
It was rented at the time of the flood. I, in the past, had it for some short-term rentals, and then I would come out here in between. We didn't have Airbnbs officially back then.
Sure.
But it was kind of a, I don't want to say second residence, but I did come out here and I have come out a number of times over the years and spent time here. But it was rented at the time of the flood.
Okay. And this is on the exterior, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Oh, well, that's the interior of the exterior wall. I should have printed out a picture of the house, I apologize, but it's a rock on the front, and this is right inside the rock wall. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I can picture it.
My clear as asphalt.
Any other questions? Trustee Brown?
Ms. Schroeder, I understand your point about the code definition looking to the future for residents, but I never actually heard you say, what is your intent? Is it your intent to move to Lyons and live there for at least a year? I mean,
Yes, it is. I put that in the, well, I think I put it in my Exhibit A, which is now I don't know what it is, something else, but yes, that's been my desire to move here for some time. It's in kind of a catch-22 situation because you're not supposed to occupy it till it's done, so you can't establish your 12 months of residency, and yet you can't get the certificate of occupancy without the, I mean, it's like, it's a chicken egg situation in a way. It's really, I don't know, I think it's backwards.
Just to be clear, however the house may get completed, by general contractor, by you as general contractor, whatever method ultimately gets completed, once it's done, it's your intent to move back here and live in it for at least a year?
Yes.
Okay.
Assuming it gets done.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Trustee Farrell?
Ms. Yoder, since the appeal from August the 6th, have you stayed current on the utility bills?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear it. It came to my attention around that time that you have some properties in Kansas.
That is correct.
Okay.
And I said I got my home on the market for sale. I actually would like to lighten that load so I can be.
Sure. Well, I happened to see on January the 3rd that there was a Fox newscast about
Oh,
your
you know what?
properties.
I was in West Virginia. My father, I can't believe I said that. My father died when I was 15. My brother, my youngest brother, died last year, and I was back in West Virginia dealing with administration of his estate. When some reporter, and before I left, I had filed an eviction of somebody who hadn't paid rent for over 4 months. And then and I got actually an order, and then she contacted the reporter, who never mentioned that there was an order of eviction, and actually did more damage than the deposit to the house, significantly more, and none of that was mentioned. So the reporter, as it turned out, was a friend of her neighbor, and anyway, it was a very I submitted information which was never presented on that, but that is correct.
So I'm just concerned because it did come out in
Trustee Farrell, what's the relevance of this line of question?
Yeah.
Well, it talked about code violations, and I'm concerned about if there might be a history here that could be applicable to the situation, because it looks like this could create a code violation.
What could create a code violation?
By using this particular form of
The
rock
phone?
without a contractor, if you, as a licensed contractor yourself.
If I, as a homeowner, were the contractor and not a licensed contractor, is that what you mean?
Isn't that one of the questions?
Yes, it is. Okay.
And then also,
And that
by
would-
using the phone
Yes,
as a form of attaching the rock.
yes.
that's-
So you're
so-
concerned that that would create a code violation?
Correct.
That is what we're here for. And if you make a determination as a board that it is not a code violation, then it isn't. Well, obviously, I'm not gonna do it if that's not allowed. I mean, I'm not gonna waste $1,200 on something and then have to be ripped out or whatever. But I'm not sure I'm answering your question, am I? I am? Okay. But if you say, no, I can't do that, and I go ahead and do it, then that is a code violation. That's not my intention. My intention is to follow the code.
Okay, thank you.
And I actually, after that, what you referred to, I have a whole different perspective of the bias and non-bias of the news people, but they don't take two sides into account.
Trustee Locke, did you have a question?
I do, I'm not sure if this is the right point to ask it, but Benita, you mentioned, was the certificate of occupancy ever revoked on your home? So can I ask that question of staff, or should I wait?
Let's wait for staff's portion of the presentation.
Yeah. Okay, I'll wait and ask it then. Thank you.
I did call and ask this afternoon, and I don't know if they have a response because I didn't have a response at the time, but they were gonna check into it.
Trustee Carabas, any questions? We'll move on.
Just quickly, I think you stated, you talked about the cost of removing and replacing the rock wall just to try to satisfy the requirements of the substrate that the veneers and bricks go on. Can you build without that, without replacing that veneer? Is that a possibility for you financially?
Can I build at it? Can you
Or
say-
re-add, because you did have a substrate. You're talking about putting the rock back up, you said an estimate was roughly $6,000.
Uh-huh.
Have you looked at, I think you mentioned, you did look at taking that wall down and not replacing the rock, did you? Or
I
is that
actually
when the
had a
contractor didn't show up? That's why I want to verify.
Yes,
Okay.
I intended to get a figure on that, because I was looking at all the options available, and the contractor didn't show up, so I
Okay.
do not have that figure.
Okay.
I'd still like to get it.
Yeah, okay, so that is an option for you though.
That's an option that Mike mentioned
Okay.
this evening before that. It's not my preferred option because, you know, there's river moss rock on the place right now, and I would like to
keep it.
Keep it if I could, but if, you know, there is that other option.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I just ask you, instead of, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do this, let's forget Nancy Reagan and just say yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff's witness, please. You need it over.
I don't find it again. Before you set my. So
I, Michael Thyssen,
solemnly and sincerely
solemnly and sincerely
and truly declare
and truly declare
and affirm
and affirm
that I will tell the truth
that I will tell the truth
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I guess I want to start by looking at, I don't know what exhibit it is, the email that Ms. Yoder mentioned, a couple of the emails, and then the statement. So, would you like me to read those, or are you?
Okay. Has the clerk admitted that as an exhibit yet? The email from Benita Yoder?
Yes. From Benita, or are you talking
From
about?
Benita.
Email from
I
Benita.
don't think it's been
No,
admitted as an exhibit, has it?
no, I have not.
We do, admit it as staff exhibit B.
Okay. I don't have a copy of it right now, but I will.
Okay, it's in the packet. Everything's in the packet. So this is a short email that I had sent off to her. Licensed general contractor is required for any further work to be done on your permit. Homeowners are not approved to be their own general contractor unless licensed as such or property is their primary residence. In regards to the documentation submitted by you today, it is not clear how it is to be applied and not approved to attach exterior rock to the building. Please have your general contractor contact the building department with any additional questions. So the purpose of this email, this was shortly after I had been out to the house. She had another permit on the home for an electrical service change that an electrician had pulled. So I had went out there to do an inspection on that, and she happened to be there, and we discussed, you know, the rock wall and, you know, some of the things, and she had mentioned a couple things about propping up the home and removing the exterior studs and maybe putting something on there to attach this rock in the way to have the, you know, have the things. And at that point, you know, I said that that's probably not a good idea, and then at that point, I realized that it probably wouldn't be a good idea for her or to have some people doing that weren't licensed or, you know, able to structurally do things to a home without, you know, a little more expertise. So that's kind of where I went with the general contracting portion of it. And after that conversation is when I dug a little deeper into the municipal codes, not the building codes, but the municipal codes, where it mentioned about what we had talked about, or what she had mentioned about the residency requirements to do your own work, which I'll address that a little bit here in just a minute. And then the portion of the spray foam, she had mentioned, you know, spraying the spray foam on there, and that it would, hold the rock on, and, my intent of the email to this is to not have that go forward, because she already had a permit at this point, is to not move forward with this spray foam idea, and then, be out, I guess it was $1,200 is what she mentioned, on that, and not be out that amount of money. So I wanted to make sure that I was stopping that, because the documentation that I'm speaking of here is the documentation submitted, which is I don't know what exhibit this is, but it's the foam lock, which this was an exhibit that was.
It has not been formally submitted as an exhibit. It's been called.
Okay, this is not my exhibit. I think I did submit the same form.
Okay.
With also other documentation, but this was submitted by Ms. Yoder.
See what that is, exhibit C? Staff exhibit C?
No, the applicant.
Applicant's exhibit.
D, I think.
D,
Brad.
we're on right now.
Okay, so this was dropped off on my desk here at Town Hall, and that was what I was talking about there, that this was not to be used to attach the rock, but it would be fine for, and that's what it meant by it's not clear how this is to be applied, and it's not approved to attach the exterior rock to the building, because for the moisture barrier, then it does do that. If you clearly read in there, it's used as a moisture barrier, fire retardant. There's a couple different things that it's not used as a structural adhesive of any sort, or attaching any type of thing to the building. So that's where I'm at with that email, to clarify. I don't want to read to you what I wrote necessarily, the whole, because I'm sure you read the letter. I guess I didn't date it, but it's the letter that was talked about. Dear Board of Trustees, has that been admitted into?
Yes, staff exhibit A.
Okay. So and this was just based on doing the same thing. This is more of what I'd like to talk about more than anything. I mean, it's the first appeal was talking about the licensed contractor, and the 1 year. And it's not really clear how I understand how Ms. Yoder would have issue with some of the language, I would say, in the town's. Let me get to that. Exhibit A, the town's municipal code. So the section that this is in, let me actually pull up more of the code, because she has a small excerpt of it, but it's a little more further in the packet. Let me find that before I move forward. I think it is here, yeah, Article 3, which is under the contractor registrations section. Am I okay to talk about that without? Because that's okay. And it talks about definition of a contractor, and it basically, contractors, a firm, that does things like this. I think we understand what a contractor is, but the language that she's talking about is under that same section, and the following are not contractors. And that's the only place that it mentions the residency, and for the 1 year, which is a strange place to put it in there, but I believe the intent of the code is to, if you're going to be building a home, and this is true in other jurisdictions as well, if you're going to be working on a home or building, you totally have the right to build your own home, but that it should be you that's doing it. And if you are hiring people out, they will be licensed contractors, whether they be electricians, whether they be carpenters, whether they be plumbers. You can hire those people, but they still need to also be licensed with the state, or with the town. And that's maybe I'm reading into that, but like I said, I understand that it's in a strange section in there, but I think that would be the intent of that. And I think by not having that as a contractor with any jurisdiction, including the town of Lyons, you're required to have certain insurances, licenses, things like that. Once you're your own general contractor, there is no insurance. You're not going to make sure that you have insurance. You have your liability insurance maybe on your homeowner's insurance, but we don't ask for that. So my concern is, if you're not doing your work yourself and you don't plan on living in the house yourself, is where you start having the issues where if it's faulty, you're taking care of it yourself. If it isn't, and there's other people involved either building it or not, and that's what I mentioned about the safety, which Bonita read, talking about the safety, and that was my issue on that part. So I think I've covered most of it. I guess questions, or is there more that you'd like me to cover? Because I have a couple exhibits on here, but I don't want to go through everything if we don't need to on that, so.
I think we can ask the board if they have questions, and then add to the exhibits if needed.
Okay.
I'll start, actually. Can you just clarify for me specifically what led you to believe that she did not intend to live in the house after it was complete?
It was a conversation at one time, I don't have an exact date or the exact conversation, that she had mentioned, and it might have been, she sparked when she mentioned about the 4 to 6 months, and that might have been at the time that she mentioned that. I can't tell you exactly when that was, but it was a conversation that I remember having, that she had maybe it was that she had rented it before and planned to continue to rent it, things like that. I don't recall. I would guess that it was after the permit was issued, because I assumed that it was a primary residence, but I don't know that, you know what I mean? I know that it's been under, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that, of when, but I know that I had the conversation, so.
Okay. And then secondly, so say someone does become their own general contractor, the permit process still requires them to build and do all the work per the town code or the building codes, correct?
Correct.
So if that person couldn't comply with the code, they would be kind of prohibited from doing the work either way, whether they hired it out or if they tried to do it themselves, assuming they were intending to live there. Is there any difference, I guess, in how the code is applied between kind of a do-it-yourself homeowner and a contractor, or is it the same code?
Not as far as the building code, it's the same code, we use the same code book, there's no leniency one way or the other.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Trustee Farrell and then Trustee Browning.
So, I guess I still need clarification. Was it your impression, or that this particular foam, that she was going to use it as a structural adhesive rather than just relying on it as a barrier insulation, which is its primary purpose?
Yes, per the emails and the conversations I had, it was that was the fix for adhering the stone to the building and for the moisture barrier that was required once the stone was adhered to the building.
But that's not the intent of how it could be used properly. In other words, that would not work.
No, and there's, like, in the documentation that was submitted by Benita, and also the documentation that I submitted that gives a little further on that. I guess we can look at, I don't know, what do we want to call this one? This is exhibit.
We'll call it the exhibit, staff's exhibit C at this point.
And it's the same foam, it's just done by the ICC, which is the same people that write the code book. And just a small section in here, let me find it. Foam lock, FL 2000 spray foam. Insulation is a medium density, semi-rigid cellular polyurethane foam plastic that is installed as a non-structural component of floor, ceiling assembly, wall assemblies, and attics and crawl spaces. So, I mean, there's several pages of this, but that's pretty specific of what it is and what it isn't. So it mentions it being non-structural, and it also mentions that it is the foam, so.
Trustee Brennan?
You just answered my question.
Oh, okay. Any more questions for staff? Would Ms. Yoder like to come up and add anything else to the record?
We need to do public comment at this point.
Oh, before that? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for any public comment. If anyone would like to come forward and comment on the appeal as presented. Okay, seeing none, then I invite Ms. Yoder, if you wanted to add anything else.
Sure.
To come back up.
Would you folks speak up a little louder?
We can certainly
I
try.
can't hear you, I
You know what?
can't hear
These are
mine.
on. That's fine.
And I have a hearing aid.
I'm not getting. Is yours? Okay. Sorry about that.
Let me ask you, by the way, am I speaking too loud? Because I forget that I have a microphone. Okay. I don't want to be shouting.
Go ahead.
But, this one won't be over an hour. Just briefly. it's not a requirement of the code for, quote, do-it-yourselfers or homeowners, but there is something called builder's risk insurance that is available to homeowners who do their own work. I met with Megan, the local insurance agent, just about that possibility. Again, it's not in the code, but if that is something that's of concern for people to have something like that, it's a consideration for the change list Mr. Browning's probably making for changes we were over the months. But at any rate, yeah, I would be held to the same standard of compliance with a building permit in my name as a licensed contractor would be. I understand that since I started this process, the town updated the code, or is going by more updated building code. I think it was 2006 or something when I met with Alan, and then in August 1st, you changed it to 2015 building code, and I understand that's the current one. But if, my request would be that if the board makes a finding that the foam is not approved, I would ask that the finding be made specifically for the brand of foam that is in the exhibit, this Foam Lock 2000, because I've learned the distinction that there is potentially a structural foam out there. And if you deem this to be non-structural and deny it, I would ask that that denial be limited to this specific product, because that is the one for which I turned in specifications for Mike to approve, and that's the part that he disapproved. This is in the exhibits, right?
Yes.
Okay. Which would be Foam Lock 2000. Of course, I'm asking that you not make that finding, but if you do, I'd like to have it be specific. And then the broader question is the issue of the building permit. This one, it is actually a more encompassing one for me than the specific rock wall issue. And I really ask that you do allow me to continue having a building permit in my name. I only have the building permit at this point for phase one, what I call phase one, which is making the upstairs livable. But at some point, I hope to come back in and make the basement livable to finish it off. You know, if you want to address it just for this particular phase, I guess that would be an option, and take up the next phase in the future, or have something that would address it. But I do ask you to consider the financial hardship of having a licensed contractor. There's two issues. One is availability. I don't know if any of you have tried to remodel a house recently, but the contractors around here seem to be booked out in the future quite a bit, the licensed contractors. So there's an availability issue, which was what caused my FEMA elevation grant to expire. And there's the cost issue. They tend to mark up maybe 20% is what I was told. It varies on the contractor. But again, please consider a say yes rather than say no approach. Thank you.
Okay, so we can.
Is there anything more from? Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Real quick, I just wanted to, she mentioned about the codes changing. The permit that was issued under the older codes before the board made the change. So she is on the 2006 IRC. So any problems with that, any differences between the 2006 and the 2015, which is what we're on now, is not an issue. And then I just wanted to bring up one thing that I didn't mention before about the fiberboard. She had mentioned about the fiberboard being removed after the flood, and that was what, when you look at those pictures on those exhibits, and you see that gray mortar material, and the fact that there was a fiberboard there before. Well, that's where the mortar was applied to the fiberboard in that time, and she is right in explaining that there were some tiebacks into each one of the each one of those 2x4s. They're either nails or things like that. When I met with her contractor out there that she mentioned about doing it, he said, yeah, that's what they did in the past, the fiberboard, because you can't pound some of those into the fiberboard because it's not like a wood, it's very soft, but it's something that adds that structure that the mortars apply to. So I just wanted to bring that up so that we knew what we were talking about.
Just one question, can you clarify, has there been a certificate of occupancy issued since the flood?
I have not issued a certificate of occupancy. So, and the part about revoking it, we didn't revoke anything, but I don't know if that was a condition of the flood. I wasn't here back then, so I don't know if there was one, if they were revoked for everybody that was in the flood area or something. That's what I would assume, but I don't know that that's the case. So, but I don't have anything that we've done as long as we've been here. So,
thank you.
Okay.
Does the town administrator have
You know,
comments?
it was, we were using a different building inspector at that time, so I don't know what their overall process was. What she was referring to was following the flood, we had Safe Built went through every structure and marked it as either green, yellow, or red. This structure was marked a yellow. So red meant uninhabitable, and it meant unsafe to enter. Yellow meant that it was a restricted area, so the owners could go in, licensed contractors. But I don't remember it being specifically that they took away COs. You know, I don't remember even the red buildings, something going in the file saying we've revoked your CO. It was marked as uninhabitable or restricted. And I do know this house was marked yellow restricted. I do have that documentation.
Thank you. And we need to let the applicant respond.
Yeah, the applicant has the last word if she'd like to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I hope it's more than one word. Well, thanks for that clarification, Victoria.
So, yeah, I would have to, I wish this would have come up sooner. I could have asked Safe Built, but I don't recall, like, everyone getting a CO in their address file that said, you know, revoked. I just don't remember that for anyone.
Okay, because I had received, it's not in your packet, but I did receive an email, I think September 15th, from Deb Anthony, reminding me that the house couldn't be occupied by anyone until there was a certificate of occupancy. And I was looking through emails today, and that's what triggered that. I wanted clarification, because I didn't remember it ever being revoked.
You know, they may have used substantial damage as their threshold. And your house, I think
No
it
substantial
was not substantial damage.
Right.
Meaning that it would cost more than 50% of the value of the structure to repair it. That was the definition of substantial damage. And we still track that. We even track substantial improvement. So as people are putting money into these structures, if they reach more than 50%, then they become substantially damaged and it affects your insurance.
So it appears that if the house, since the house was not substantially damaged, the certificate of occupancy is still in place.
I don't know that, yeah. I just know I found the documentation from the original inspector saying.
Yeah, sorry.
It can't be a Paul and Cleve.
Oh, sorry.
It was yellow, sorry, that's all, it was yellow.
Okay, well, if there's any clarification from the BOT on that, would be helpful. And Mike mentioned the ties or the nails that they don't really show in the picture, but that are between the 2x4 framing and the rock front of the wall. Trust me, I have been in the house so many times, and that rock wall does not seem to be going anywhere. It appears that those nails or metal, they look kind of like nails. When you look, you have to get your eyes and nose kind of up there and look from the side of the framing, that they have kept that framing and the rock attached for all these years. It seems to be solid, but at any rate, I would ask that you allow me to continue with work in the house with the building permit in my name for future work in the house. Obviously, it has to be in code compliance, but please allow me to continue with it in my name. And if you have any alternatives for, other than spray foam, if you don't like that alternative, you have something else, I would love to hear about it. Thank you.
Okay, we'll conclude the testimony and turn it over to the board for discussion. Would you like to do that?
I was going
Trustee
to clarification from you. How you want to, which issue you want to tackle first? You want to do them separate, or you want to go all together in one?
Good
Permit
question.
or the
Let's take the
substrate?
foam first, and then we'll take on the permit. Contractor. Okay.
No, my
Comment?
question, that
Oh.
was just, yeah, I want to do it first, and then I'll go look at my
Trustee
notes
Browning?
and go over my stuff for a second.
If we do the foam issue first, to me, that's an easy one. Building inspector has made his decision, it's been appealed. The code in the appeal says that the burden of proof is on the applicant to show basically that the building inspector was incorrect, or that there's a substantial hardship not faced by others in a similar position. There have been, first of all, there's no showing that the building inspector's decision in that respect is incorrect. He's given evidence that this foam is not intended for structural purposes, and that's why he refused to approve it. So there's no proof to overcome that. And secondly, in terms of hardship, while I recognize it is a significant financial hardship, it's no different a hardship than many, many other people in Lyons have faced since this flood. There have been multiple homeowners in the confluence that have had to do things that were caused significant financial hardship for them, but just needed to be done to comply with the building code. And Ms. Yoder finds herself in the same position that they're in, and so the burden of proof being on her, I don't think we could possibly overrule the building inspector in that respect.
Any other comments? You may disagree with that position?
I don't disagree.
I don't disagree with it either.
Is there a motion to deny the appeal on the issue of using the foam product that was presented in the exhibits?
So moved.
Or second? Any further discussion?
I just want to clarify, it's the exact foam that was in the exhibit that Benita Yoder provided, her exhibit, right? That foam. Okay. So just to clarify that that is specifically what we're denying.
So a yes vote is a denial, a no vote.
Yeah, I guess I'll clarify that my comment, which I think was so moved, was intended to say that the product that was presented in the exhibit is not allowed to be used as the owner would like to. It doesn't mean that other alternatives that would be sufficient and meet the building code couldn't be considered. It just means this particular product can't be used. That was my intent.
Agree.
Any further discussion or question? I'll call for the vote. And that passes 6-0. On the issue of allowing the permit to remain in Ms. Yoder's name, any comments on that? Trustee Brown?
I have some comments. I think Ms. Yoder on this point makes some valid points. I don't think our ordinance in Article 3 is as clear as it could be. It does say intended to be a residence. It doesn't refer to time in the past. It just says intended to be a residence for at least a year after the certificate of occupancy. It also does not say primary residence. I think that was in the building inspector's email to Ms. Yoder. Probably, maybe it should say primary residence, but it doesn't. So a summer vacation home, home of somebody that has multiple residences, the way our code is now written, it doesn't say that you have to, it has to be your primary residence, and it doesn't say you have to be your current residence. I was glad to see that both Ms. Yoder agreed with the building inspector that even if she is the, serving as her own contractor on the home, she recognizes that she must hire licensed subcontractors to do the work, and that the result must comply with the building code as determined by the building inspector. But under our code as written, I don't see a reason that we can deny her the right to act as her own contractor.
Does anyone feel differently on that point? Trustee Miller? Comments? Look like you were thinking. You were gonna say something.
Well,
you don't have to if you don't have a comment. So.
I do have some fairly strong opinions about this. I would like to see her hire a contractor, specifically because the house has been sitting empty for 5 years now. It has been in the flood. I know the condition of the house prior to the flood was not great, because I had a couple of friends who lived there for a couple of years as renters and had some pretty big issues that they had to put up with. So I feel like...
I'm gonna ask the board to just disregard that statement, just because it wasn't presented as evidence on this part of the discussion.
But
Is that appropriate?
Yeah, so the law on quasi-judicial proceedings is that, what you really should not consider is information that was not presented in the hearing and came between the point which an appeal was noticed and this appeal happened. So trustees do not walk into a quasi-judicial proceeding without any knowledge of prior history. And so general knowledge as to conditions of this house are admissible, but probably specific statements as to it is probably not permissible.
Okay. However, that being said, that has been sitting there for 5 years with nobody living in it. And I feel like when a house sits empty for that long of a period of time, that there's a lot of deterioration that can happen just from it sitting empty. Therefore, if somebody doesn't have a contractor to help them structurally, I feel like potentially could be fairly dangerous to work on with water damage and whatnot. So that's all.
Trustee Farrell?
Yes, I do remember that when during her first appeal in August the 6th, making the comment back then that she planned to have the property rented for a while, and then I think with the inspector having said the same thing based on his conversations with her, and the history of it being a rental property, I feel that it would be best to have a licensed contractor to do this work.
I'm going to ask everybody to speak on this one. Trustee Carabas?
I'm more in line with Trustee Browning on the fact it's not very clear in our own codes what it states. And as a town that stated previously helping those homes to get them back online for residents, that's what we're here to do. We said we're going to do this, the last one. Any adjustments to the house that need to be done from the house sitting for 5 years, the inspectors are going to catch, and she's going to have to change and update. It would be, if it is approved today, it would be in her best interest to move expeditiously on this, because the longer it takes, more things do deteriorate, and it will cost her more money than it is to possibly repair. So if we do allow her to build and act as her own general contractor, it's in her best interest to move quickly and follow the codes, because the inspectors are going to be there, the towns are going to be on it and watching.
Trustee Wah.
I'm in agreement with Trustee Browning and Trustee Carabas. really in agreement with all that you said, and just to say further, I don't think it's our place to judge whether or not, it's not in our realm to judge the condition of the home or whether or not Benita Yoder is a qualified contractor for herself. Our job here is to interpret the code and speak to that specifically, and I think code allows for that. And just to reiterate Trustee Carabas, I think it's in her best interest to bring it up to code, and I think having worked with the inspectors on my own remodel, I know that they will find everything that they possibly can and have you do it right, so I have faith in that process.
Yeah, I would agree. I think our job here is to basically apply the code as it's written and interpret it, and we can really only base our decision on what we've heard here tonight and her testimony in case she intends to live in the property after it's complete. I think it's clear she obviously still has to meet the same standards regardless of whether she wants to take on that job herself or hire it out. We didn't really question her qualifications tonight, so not sure I could assess her qualifications myself. But I think there's nothing in the code that really allows us to really deny her that, in my opinion. So I don't disagree that maybe she could benefit from some professional help to make sure she chooses the right products and does the work the correct way. But I think that's her decision that she needs to be upset. So is there a motion on the second item of the appeal?
I move that we approve Mrs. Yoder's appeal to proceed with her as her own general contractor.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? I guess the only thing I would add is that if this is something that we do have in our code, if it would help to put the question on the application so we know if people plan to be, using the home as a residence, then that may be something we should add. All right, I'll call for the vote. Is there delivery?
Oops.
Okay, the motion does pass 4-2. All right, thank you everyone very much. I'm gonna call, would the board be open to a short recess and allow Trustee Drystad to come back and join us, and then we'll resume the meeting. Is there a motion?
The bridge. It was Mark and Julie.
2, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving rules and standards for the revolving loan fund ad hoc committee.
Excuse me, we're starting again, please. Thank you.
Number 2 is first reading on ordinance 1042, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons, Colorado, amending Article 4 of Chapter 13 or the Lyons Municipal Code for the purpose of increasing the service rates for wastewater utility service. Number 3 is the first reading for ordinance 1045, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Article 4 of Chapter 13 of the Lyons Municipal Code for the purpose of creating a high-strength surcharge and pretreatment program. Item number 4 is first reading on ordinance 1046, an ordinance of the Town of Lyons amending Article 4 of Chapter 13 of the Lyons Municipal Code for the purpose of other miscellaneous amendments of the wastewater utility service code. Item number 5 is resolution 2018-99, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving an agreement for animal services between the Town of Lyons and the Longmont Humane Society for 2019. Item number 6 is resolution 2018-96, a resolution of the Town of Lyons approving the renewal of professional services with the Adams Group to perform 2018 financial audit services. Item number 7 is the November 2018 accounts payable. Number 8 is the October 15th Board of Trustees special meeting minutes, meeting minutes, and then the October 25th, 2018 Board of Trustees special meeting minutes.
Would anyone like to pull any items from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull item number 1.
Any others? All right, is there a motion to approve the remaining items on consent?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? I just wanted to let the board know I did find an error in the board meeting minutes in item number 8, which was October 15th, which I sent to the clerk and she's going to correct. It was all the members that I appointed to the revolving loan fund weren't listed. So she does have the correct list. So just
And they're all in now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'll call for the vote. And that's passed 7-0. Thank you. We'll go on to the general business. The first item is a BOT discussion and public comment on the 2nd Avenue Bridge. So I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. We have a presentation the board saw at the workshop. I don't know if you want us to repeat it again for the public, knowing the time.
Can you just run through it very quickly?
Sure.
I think that would be
Can
helpful.
someone pull the screen down again, please?
Oh,
Wow, sorry.
Finally, put it back up. I'm that.
Mark.
Who's tall? Mark.
Someone's going to see him.
You're going to right your chair.
You'll get it, you'll get it.
I was watching this on.
Do not try this at home.
Right.
Follow the rules, do what we say, not what we do. Right?
This is way
No, okay.
No, I don't. That's what I'm. I always use it.
Oh, now I got up.
There it is. I don't know whose that is. That's not even my screensaver.
If you send it to me, I can try it.
Can you just use the flash drive?
No, it's. This is this. No, it's on here.
It's on here.
We can start about.
Okay, why don't you go ahead. Oh.
That's you. Do it.
We need to have a dance like they have in Fortnite. You know, like just a video game.
There it is.
No, that's
The girls.
45 minutes.
There we go. Thank you. That's the front. We should have done that one. Brandon.
There it went. Now it's fun.
You switched the input, it was.
Maybe see my,
There you go. Is that as big as it will go? If you go to view mode.
We're down here and they decided that they're gonna.
The other one.
You have to go to slide.
You have to go to view, 100, and then view mode. You might want to turn off the lights in the front again, please. So, this topic is about the Second Avenue Bridge replacement project and the impact that it's having on the neighboring residences. We'll go to the first slide. Oh, that's not working.
Which side? This one?
Yeah. Some people have asked, why are we even looking at changing the bridge if it's going to have such a significant impact? First of all, of course, is safety. The bridge was the cause of major disaster in the 2013 flood, causing debris to back up on it and to wash out the entire access to the Lions Valley Park neighborhood and the wastewater treatment plant and everything downstream of that, McConnell Bridge. Also, there's new stream flow rates that we need to be considering. And in regard to the National Flood Insurance Program rates, if we want to keep the residents' flood insurance rates down, it's in our best interest to mitigate a future flood damage. This bridge was built in 1973, so it has almost met its 50-year lifespan. So while we have funding available to replace it and make it more safe, we feel this is the best time to make this change. So during the 2013 flood, you'll see the picture on the lower left, debris really built up against this bridge, causing the stream to go out of its banks and significant damage to the bridge and its approaches, causing us to have to do temporary repairs on this bridge, replacing 3 of the caissons as a temporary fix. Go ahead. The overall, this project would be funded by FEMA as a public assistance project. The scope of the project is design, engineering, construction, and remove and replace the bridge with a clear span bridge, meaning there'd be no piers holding the bridge up for debris to get caught on. So it will allow free flow. Oh no, go back. Free flow of the debris under the bridge. We are. If we were able to start the construction, we're now out to potentially spring with current timeline. The construction needs to be complete in the fall of 2019. So I'm getting down to the wire on this one. Okay. June of 2016, the town submitted its 30% drawings to the state to replace the bridge, including hydraulic reporting and mitigation. In December, so 6 months later, we get a no, go back to the drawing board. So then we redesigned the bridge at a new 30% drawing in May, and in March, almost a year later, we get another denial. August of 2018, we raised the bridge even higher. So now the bridge is up to 5 to 6 feet higher than what it currently is at a maximum. And they are now willing to consider it for final approval. So the current status is the 30% design of the bridge being a clear span and much higher is now awaiting FEMA approval. And there are a couple options. And that's why we're seeking board input tonight on which option. FEMA has asked us if we have a preference. So that's a good sign that they're at least considering it. So this is an overall site plan, really hard to see. The right-hand side is Park Street and 2nd Avenue intersection. The far west side is right near the new entrance to the recycling center. And as you can see, because the bridge is so much higher, the approaches to the bridge will have to have a much larger length. It won't be a short approach like we have now. And so the new bridge will be built to handle a 100-year flow, and at a 500-year event, which is similar to what we had, that it would be a 500-year scour, meaning that the bank overflows would scour the area but not hold debris like it did. What the impact of this higher bridge and approaches does is the homes that are on 2nd Avenue, and I should have 2nd Avenue Alley, and I don't know if Trustee Dreisaitz, if you could point that out. Thank you. The access to those alleys is now, the road is higher than the alley, to a point that we have 2 options, and that's the next one. Oh, this is an overhead view of it. Might be able to help you see it a little better. We're just looking at the bridge itself is down in the lower left, right, yeah, right there. The approach will now go past that alley. Yep, past there. What you see in the black line comes into play with one of the options, and that is a buyout property through FEMA HMGP, no, through CDBG-DR, sorry, I had that backwards, through CDBG-DR. And they have given us approval that if we choose the option to block the alley, that the black buyout property would now become the new alley access, instead of coming off of 2nd Avenue to get to those homes along 2nd Avenue Alley. Okay, so that's going to come into play. We'll probably reference this again. Go ahead. Option A, and this is a very detailed drawing, kind of hard to read unless you've had a chance to look at it, but it would close off the existing alley on the west side and would use that buyout property as the new access point. The impact on this option to the east, because there's also an alley going to the east, it does not block it. There's a little steeper slope than what's currently there, but it's not too steep for fire trucks and cars to use, so that would remain open. If we close off the alley completely, the impact to the neighbors on the north and the south becomes that they would no longer be able to pull off of 2nd Avenue to park their cars. They would have on-street parking available now, which there's a yellow line there now for part of that. And option A also is the preferred option for the fire district. They, currently we have some folks, there, that's good, go back to that one. We have some folks at the end of this alley that are applying for ADU, accessory dwelling units behind their homes, and are being denied because the fire trucks cannot go down this alley in its current location and get out of that situation safely. So they like the idea of the buyout being more mid-block and then putting a hydrant at the alley so that it could reach all of those homes in the back. Option B, thank you, is we leave the alley access open, and it would still be rather steep, but would meet code. But to be able to cut the bridge approach off at the alley means that 2 retaining walls, Vanna, can you do it again for me? The 2 retaining walls go to the east and west, right, where the retaining walls would be. Up a little more, right there. Go along the alley. So, yeah, we would have to build retaining walls to hold that bridge approach up. By doing that, we then, oh, you found one.
I got one.
Yay! Then the access to the garage on the south, that person can no longer access their garage. And the folks on the north can still squeeze in there, but they just have to change the direction they're used to parking. There is no funding currently to compensate that property owner for the loss of their garage. FEMA FEMA says that is not covered by them, you know, they covered the bridge. We don't have a value on that yet. There'll have to be probably appraisals and negotiations on that if we were to go with that option. This option is the vocally preferred option by several of the residents that live in the area when we've met with them, and but not all of them. And the fire department has their concerns I expressed already in this situation. And so they both meet the mitigation needs for FEMA. It's just a matter of, do we want to express a preference to them, or they will select. So the next slide. The town has hired the bridge designers to come out and put stakes in the ground so people get a better idea of how high these walls would be, where the location of the alley, and how far out the retaining walls would go. And so this is just a descriptor of how to interpret those when you're out in the field. We have offered to meet neighbors in the field to explain these, or we could print this as a handout too. Next one. So basically, we are seeking input from the trustees and more input from residents on the options regarding the west side alley access. Option A being close the alley and use the buyout property. Or option B, alley access remains open, but we then close access to the garage at 207 2nd Avenue, with some potential expenses yet to be determined. And that's really what we're here to talk about tonight. You want me to leave this up while you talk?
Yeah, just in case we need the maps. So just allow the board to ask questions of staff before we ask the public to come up and comment.
And just so that, we also dealt with this at a was it a workshop? At the budget workshop. We discussed this as well. So this is not the first time the board has seen this, and neither the neighbors either, so.
Any questions for staff?
One question, how intense would you qualify the position of the fire department?
The fire department has said they will deny the use of any of those structures to have either a major remodel or an ADU in this alley if we take option B.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, if there's anyone here who would like to comment on this question that's before the board, you can come up now. You can give your name and address for the record. Each person will have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Okay, would anyone like to comment?
I have a question.
Can you come up, please? Thank you.
If,
Can you give your name and address for the record first? I'm sorry. We're very formal here.
Melissa Winkler, I'm 196 2nd Avenue. If FEMA ends up denying this request and you determine the bridge is still unsafe, do you have plans for the bridge?
I'm not sure I understand the
If
question.
FEMA is not going to give you funding for the bridge?
Oh, if they deny
what's your plan?
funding?
Yeah.
I don't think we know that.
Okay.
I mean, I think, I don't know, do we have a sense?
I think what will happen is your insurance rates will go up for not only you guys, but the whole community. Anybody beyond that point, the insurance rates will go up. Structurally, I think it's okay, you know, what we replaced pier-wise with the piers, but I do remember our last bridge inspection, it did have a scour rating that was getting higher. I would guess we'll probably hit it in the next 5 to 10 years. We'll have to replace it either way.
And then if you do get the funding, was it that you just have to start building by the fall, or you have to have it completed?
Completed by fall.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
Hi, Keith Rousseau, 190
Wow, I just suddenly forgot my address, 194.
They just brought it. They just brought it.
I just know how to get there. So we're on the east side, so obviously at some point our alley will need to be unusable. I'm just wondering if we know when that will be and for how long, and in particular if that could not be in late March when I'm gonna have to get a pregnant lady to the hospital and I'll be really stressed out.
I do not know that, but whenever it is closed, there, we will provide a secondary access for you.
Oh.
Probably through the other buyout.
Oh, okay.
Or the alley further down, you know, down behind
Yeah.
109 Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, they will not.
So there'll always be some way for us to get in and out?
Yes, and for a fire truck to get in and out in an ambulance. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll
Got
do the
it.
ambulance thing, or the fire truck. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll open it up for board discussion. What's the sense of the board on this request for direction? May I want to start? Trustee Watt?
Sure. I'm in favor of option A. I do think it's better for fire access, and beyond there being an application for an ADU in there, I'm really familiar with that alley, and the access is really tight in there, so I'm also concerned about the current residents that live in the alley and the fire access for the current residents. So I just think this is the better solution. I think from what I've heard, I think it's the desire of the majority of the neighbors in that area as well, so that's my reasoning for option A.
Does anyone have a different opinion on Trustee Watt? Yep, I would just concur with that. It feels like, while it's unfortunate that it does change access for these folks, we have a solution, an alternative available, which we really don't for option B for the garage issue. And it just, you know, this is the best for the greater good. I mean, this will impact more people in a positive way. And we won't have the funding to do this project if we don't do it now. So I would be in favor of option A as well.
I probably should comment just for both the board and the public that we are currently under the floodplain maps, that Park Street is floodplain, and there are parts of Park Street that will be floodway. But once this bridge is built, then that will all go away again. You know, because the river will be able to hold more water. And so it's a good thing. I mean, we're gonna currently, with the 2019 adoption of the FEMA maps, it's going to say, all of a sudden you guys are in a floodway because we haven't made changes. But as soon as we make these changes and refile another letter of map revision, they'll come back out. So I know it's really complicated, we don't deal with it every day, but just want to make that aware too, that there's going to be a time, because there were a couple residents that said during the flood event itself, they couldn't get out Park Street, so that new access point would be inaccessible. And so they had to use the alley. But once the bridge is in, that water won't be on Park Street. Does that make sense? Okay.
Trustee Carroll? Yeah.
Based on what you said, in Park Street, if nothing's done and parts of Park Street become floodway.
Yes. Yes.
What does that do to those particular people if they try to file for a permit to remodel a home, a substantial remodel? How does that affect?
They will have to either elevate their home again, or they will pay higher insurance rates when they do a major remodel or a rebuild.
So if a home on Park Street now happens to get into the new maps as a floodway, and it didn't get substantial, so it wasn't raised, they pull a permit to do something, chances are, depending on the level of what they do, they may have to be forced to raise their home?
Well, depending on the level of what they do, not for simple things.
No, I know, but
if
I'm
they
talking
come in
for-
and even want to install like a furnace,
Yes.
it will have to be above, 2 feet above flood base,
Yep.
flood elevation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to direct staff to pursue option A with FEMA?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. And it's approved 7-0.
Wow.
Thank you. All right, update on David Miller Ditch.
Paul's coming up, and they have representatives here too.
Thank you. So we just wanted to update the board on some progress on the Dave Miller Ditch. For some background, the Dave Miller Ditch serves 14 customers in Apple Valley. It was destroyed during the flood, and the Dave Miller Ditch recently received a DOLA application, a DOLA grant to rebuild the ditch. The ditch currently, its alignment starts west of the Apple Valley Rainbow Bridge and comes down and enters into Apple Valley after the bridge. And the current location, they could rebuild it in that current location, but the assessment is that it will likely destabilize the bank, so they are looking for alternative locations to that original and permitted location. They're looking at a few options. One that was presented last time is no longer one of the primary options. They're looking at 3 other options, roughly. 2 of them are about the same. The primary option is to work with Longmont to use the old water intake alignment and the old water intake location to do a gravity-fed system into the ditch. That would require the least amount of change to our ditch location, and it would probably be the easiest. There are 2 other locations that are adjacent to the corner. I think it's the northeast corner of the Hart property, where the rear of the water treatment plant property is, the east side of the water treatment plant property. We, on Friday, I think it was last week, we went out and visited, a few of the trustees went out and looked at these locations. When we visited the site, we assumed the property was in, the solar array required for the new location would be located on the Hart property entirely. But it looks like, based on the survey that was completed in the interim, that it would be located on town property, just on the rear of the water treatment plant property would be the ideal location. There are a few others that may be just on the Hart property in that area, so they're looking at 3 different potential locations in that area. They are currently in their timeline. They're starting their environmental assessment and would like to start design in about a month. So they're looking for a commitment from a preferred location within that time. I think they're working with Longmont currently to see if the preferred option for the water intake location from the old water treatment plant is available. If that is not available, then we're looking at an option on the rear of our water treatment plant or on the Hart property, one of the 2. They would like that would require changing the location of the ditch, the intake, as well as, so it would be a swap of the easement, if you will, where the current ditch is. And it would make the property down next to the Rainbow Bridge, it would remove the ditch in that area. It would make that a little bit more usable from a recreation standpoint. So at this point, did I miss anything?
No, maybe, can you guys pull up the map? Can you pull up like a Google map of
It was in,
Bridge at all?
it was in the packet.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's in the packet.
You can pull up this. Is that, would that be?
I think the main ask that we have here on behalf of, my name's Brandon Lewis with L4. We've been hired to do the design and construction. Is to present to you the value of making a swap here based on the various usage needs that we have. And I think maybe if we kind of give you a little bit more of the specifics about one, where it would be and what the impacts would be. We understand that 2 of these lots are on the town's list to liquidate and sell. And so there may be an impact there that we want to talk about as well. But maybe if I show you up on the map here, you can kind of look at the specifics here in a second. Anybody you have that little
I do.
laser? Let's see here. So this was the existing ditch essentially moves right along this line right here. This red that you see is the proposed limits of disturbance. So this would be area that we have an approval to work in and disturb for purposes of constructing this or doing work on this ditch. This is the bank that after we did our own assessment that we thought destabilizing it would not be the optimal idea. And reason being is that we have to reinstall pipeline into this bank. To repair that ditch, repair function and supply of that water. So the ditch comes through here, crosses under the bridge, and then it comes over here into the Hart's property right here. You can't really see it right here, it's covered with a lot of shrubbery and stuff, but our feeling is that this bank survived to the extent that it is after the flood, and digging into it to put in pipe would further destabilize it, and there's not enough funds in the budget for this to restabilize the bank to a greater resiliency than it already is right now. So the other option that we talked about is up here is the inlet for the Longmont water supply into that pipe, and that essentially we would take out right here. There's a little pump house location right here, and we would take the water and feed it right back into the existing ditch. That's right now kind of our preferred option because that's using an asset that's just sitting and doesn't have any future potential use, especially since the old water treatment plant is likely to be taken down and not in use in the future. So the idea is to reuse that, and it's actually a good system. If that is not an option, what we're proposing to the town is that so this is one of the lots right here. You can see the corner. That's the Hart's property right there. We're proposing that the swap would be to remove the prescribed easement essentially that we have right here to the ditch going through here and open that up now. So if you do sell that property, its use, it does have an increased use for whoever the property owner would be. And we would be asking in exchange for that for a formal easement to come from down here. It would still cross Town Alliance property, but it would be out of the way into the floodway. And then we would run essentially we'd have a diversion right here and an underground pipe that would feed over here and pump water into the ditch right there. So that's really unusable land anyway, since it is in the floodway. And the structure would be very minimal size. So there would be, we've already talked with Boulder County about any permit issues for that. They have no objections to that since we're not putting any fill or any structures in the floodway there. So essentially, I think that's the ask, is what we'd like you to consider is the town willing to consider doing the easement swap if we are unable. And as of right now, we don't have any indicators that the Longmont line is available to us. We're just exploring that. As of right now, the solar array is what is what would supply power to the pump. If I may, let me just explain the solar array to you because that is a critical part. You can see here, there's that was an initial proposed solar array right there. The new proposed location is to put it right here on the corner, which is in a small corner of the Town Alliance property, and that's right next to the borders the Hart property, and that is in the flood plain. And so we don't have any restrictions from Boulder County for that. So we're trying to strategically place it where, one, it's not going to have any negative impact to the existing use of the land. Two, we're not going to fall under any restrictions with Boulder County as far as being on the floodway. And three, something that not only the Harts feel comfortable with, which we've talked about extensively with them, but that the town would be comfortable with as far as an easement swap on their property. We're still evaluating the size of the solar array, and our objective is to essentially minimize, keep the solar array as small as possible to supply water, to restore water to that ditch to their shareholders. That's our goal with that. As of right now, the footprint is fairly large, and it would be, there is a visual element to consider when there's when you're considering the view shed to take into consideration, but we haven't finalized what the actual footprint of that would be based on some recent updates to our plan. And but in general concept, that's what we'd like to propose, and that's what we would ask that you communicate to us today if you are open to an easement swap on that, and if you have enough information based on your proposed, your prospective future use of those properties, if that would be something in line with your goals and something that would help us accomplish the goals of Dave Miller Ditch.
If I may, the comprehensive plan did mention looking at our properties for disposal to help with the town budget. This was one of those properties, and we haven't had an assessment or looked at the actual value of the land yet. We did have a drive-by survey and some comparables done, but it wasn't a full appraisal. They looked at this property with demolition, and it was Dave Miller Ditch that provided these numbers. They said it would be 75 to 100,000 if you include demolition. Now I looked at the surrounding properties, and it looked like the land value of the surrounding properties for twice the acreage was about $300,000 to $300,000 if you take off the structures. So it may be in that ballpark, but without an actual appraisal, we won't know. So I think we also asked the Dave Miller Ditch to provide some visuals of what the array would look like if it went in. Because they've moved the location to a new location, they haven't had time to do that. So our hope is to bring, if necessary, we want to find out whether we should continue to work on the proposed location on this site and assess it in more detail.
I'm going to let the board ask questions. Trustee Farrell and then Trustee Watt.
So I just want some clarification, because when we walked the property on Friday, the pump idea was that it was going to be, oh gosh, what is that, east of the bridge, kind of down towards the river. It was going to, yeah.
So it's going to be right about there.
So that's now considered really from placement of the pump, your plan B, that you've gone back up.
We have moved it substantially from where we originally were looking at putting it was, about 25 feet down. Yeah, 25 feet down from the bridge. So really close. And so the change would be to move it substantially down there, out of the view, out of the way of.
The solar array would also move from here to.
Do we have a closer up there drawing of?
There's another one in
the packet, right?
This one?
Yeah.
Well, I guess if you don't mind, I'm just gonna go ahead and point.
Sure.
Yeah, this one shows it.
So one of the things that I was confused about, what you just said, actually the other one helps me better.
Yeah, I can go back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shout it out.
So, you showed us moving these over here, which you mentioned,
Correct.
with the pump being somewhere in this area. But then a few minutes ago, you started saying, well, it looked like now we could have something up here.
Right.
So has that changed? This is A option and this is B option? And would the solar panel still be over here if you had your pump here?
As far as impact to the existing environment there and I guess wise use of resources, yes, that is an A. But we do not have any indication from Longmont that this is a feasible option. So that's why we can't say that it's A right now, is because we literally just started exploring this and we have no idea how they're gonna respond to this. So as of right now, the solar array and this new approach is still A, but it may flip-flop. And so we need to, in order to keep this project moving so they can utilize the funding that they have available to them by the deadline, we have to make certain things happen. And one of the things we need to decide on is what land usage is available to us and which is not. Because then we can start to tighten up our design based on those two options. But as of right now, we need to continue on with the solar array as the likely scenario, unless we hear different from Longmont.
But I certainly personally liked when you had the solar array more close to the corner of the Hart's property.
Yes. Right.
I think from a town perspective, if we were to sell, that would be a much more reasonable place to put it than having it kind of really in the center,
Sure.
next to the road. And so,
And that was, I think, part of the reason why that switch was made, is one, we did have floodplain issues to deal with, but two, even as a proposal to the town of putting it right there when your intention is to, capture the value of that land, rather you sell it or keep it, it made more sense to relocate it into a space that isn't as significant a value.
This diagram really shows this.
Yeah, when you look at this diagram, this location would be on town land.
Yeah.
These two would not, I don't believe those two would be.
No.
So the question would be, if we are going to put it here, it would impact this parcel here, which I'm not doing a great job outlining, but that's rough. Roughly the outline of.
But the solar in these locations eliminates the need to cross the entire town property.
Correct.
The entire length of the,
So we would get rid of,
this whole line.
they would, I think we're running out of battery. They would get rid of this here,
Oh, that whole-
up to here, where
Yeah.
they would take the intake, and that would become.
Teresa, do you want to maybe hand that around so they can see? I circled the location relative to the floodplain, and the property line, so you can get a better visual on the corner that we're talking about.
Trustee Law, I have a question.
I think we need to do that.
So, I know it's a rough appraisal, it's not, an official appraisal, but how do you think an easement and the placement of the solar would affect the appraisal price?
I don't know,
Of town property,
yeah.
I think it would be less of an impact than what's currently there, significantly.
What do you mean by
Well,
that?
right now, they have an easement across the whole length of our property.
So,
Oh, right.
this is,
Yes.
this would be a long easement compared to this right here.
So you'd essentially be removing that
People would
easement all
have
the way
all of
through.
that being
yeah.
usable versus one on just our north border.
Is your current easement prescriptive, or is it?
Prescriptive,
Okay.
as far as we know, right?
As far as we know.
It's prescriptive, right?
Yeah, well,
1872.
it might even be a right of way.
Okay.
You just mentioned the other two locations were not on town's property. Who owns the property on the other?
The Hearts.
That's the Hart property?
Adjacent, yeah, so the one above is the Hart property. I think the one to the left of the potential site.
Any other questions? Trustee
I
Barron?
think you covered this, but I want to make sure. Under the plan you just described, Plan B, you wouldn't be building anything in the non-floodplain portion of the town's property, which is a strip along the road. Is that correct?
Correct.
We would be installing not in the towns. That would all be in the Hart's
property.
Hart's property. That's correct. That's true.
Okay.
Okay, any comments or thoughts from the board? Trustee
This is
Ryan?
much preferable to what they showed last night, because my concern with the original one, where the solar array was, the value of this property, whatever that may be, I don't think anybody knows. I'm not even sure how you do an appraisal. I don't think there is a comparable property. It's very, very unique in several respects, but whatever value it has, I think is primarily in the non-floodplain portion by the roads. Beautiful view, there's enough room there to get down to the river if somebody wants river access. You could build a long, narrow structure if you wanted to along the road. The problem with the solar array in the prior iteration was it basically split the floodplain portion in two, and you weren't going to be able, nobody could build anything there. So this to me is much preferable, and I think you're right. I think eliminating the existing easement and most of that portion of the existing easement probably enhances the value of the town's property. So I compliment you and commend you for coming up with an innovative solution.
Anybody disagree? That they'd be open to the easement swap if this option became their preferred option? Staff?
Same.
All right, I think you have an okay to keep moving forward.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Next item is resolution 2018-93.
All right. Yeah.
So, this is the resolution for the town approving the lease of town property with Telegram Bluegrass and Rocky Grass. Turn it over to staff.
I'll sit here by. I'll sit here. Enemy of America. What? The press. I was going to bring that up.
Okay. So, I don't have a cover sheet for this, but I have staff report. Recently, we worked with Planet Bluegrass, and we had the workshop a couple weeks ago, and they had asked about a flat rate. And the town also has wanted to consider a flat rate, especially as we get requests from other entities who might want to lease town property. Per the workshop, one of the requests was switching to a shorter week, especially for Rocky Grass. And in the Rocky Grass contract, it goes from 8 days to 5 days. So it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Folks Fest last year switched to 4 days, and we found that was really probably a better recipe for success for the town and leasing it for our guests. So the amount covers the expense of what the town anticipates it would earn on a busy weekend, and that's assuming parking would be 100% full and paid. Camping, shelters. Midweek we probably get a little bit less because parking is not as full during Wednesday and Thursday. It definitely helps the town to budget better because now, and Brian can probably speak to it much better than me, but in the past it was 50% and based on number of campers and number of cars, and it involved bone and LNJ, and so the number was never known, whereas this, we can go in and just know we have 9 days, 5 for one festival, 4 for the other. And then I think, too, we worked out a lot of questions over the last several years about paying for some of the extra services. So, for example, in the lease agreements, Planet Bluegrass pays for all the cleaning, all the trash pickup, extra porta-johns, sheriff in Boulder County, traffic controls, security staff. It also gives our park hosts a small break. TBF has also, as you guys know, has been a good partner with the town. They help with good old days with the sound, lights, music, talent, tents, which is another event that we know we want to keep. Successful rave to the grave a couple weeks ago, Easter, Christmas Eve, and so what we've really worked on with Brian too and Brandon is getting these leases done and on the agenda now so that leases will be approved before tickets go on sale, because Brian did bring up that as well, that it's really hard for them when we get these leases approved in February and tickets have been on sale for 2 months. And my understanding is that the Planet will continue to use LNJ as their family-friendly oriented park. And I even showed Brian, I was like, there's sidewalks and crosswalks out there now. It's easier to get across. So I hope that kind of gives you the background. And if you have any questions for Brian or Craig.
Just curious why you only proposed a 1-year lease.
We actually we would be happy with a multi-year lease, and I think staff just wasn't in a position to
If you wanted to do a multi-year lease, that'd be via ordinance. So it would
That's
take
why.
additional time.
That's why we, just for this year, timing wise again, and then see how this works for everyone, and then enter a multi-year by ordinance earlier next year.
Okay. Other questions?
Couple of questions.
Trustee
So,
Brennan?
if I understand right, the town would have control and revenues from the park for an additional 3 days?
3 days.
Compared to last
Yes,
year?
exactly. It would be the way it always is from. So
Sunday to Wednesday.
Sunday, yeah,
Wednesday,
Sunday
9
to
a.m.
Wednesday,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the guesstimate of what the town's normal revenue would be for those 3 days? Well, one's a Sunday, which is busy, and the other 2 are weekdays?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say if it's 100%, it'd be roughly about the same, but certainly Sundays we know are big. And I think too, that the staff felt like that Sunday, when it would close on Sunday and then be closed the whole next week, that was the hard one, the
Right.
Sunday, but with the Wednesday. And so in our discussions, they were like, let's do Wednesday if that seems to be, you know, in the best interest of the town as well.
So what's the town's normal revenue on a Sunday?
On average, it's about almost 3,000, well, 2,880 is kind of, if everything is at 100% paid parking, paid camping and shelters.
And the other question, you've been in discussions with Planned Bluegrass, have there been further discussions about the lodging tax and how that's going to be calculated? Are those progressing, or?
We put forward a
Because it
couple,
relates to the total revenue to the town.
right?
Yeah, Brian can probably, you know, he did put something together, and I think we have to vet it kind of with, my understanding is, do we have to vet it with the attorneys to make sure?
Probably about it, yeah. I haven't seen it, so.
Yeah.
The discussions are continuing, right?
For
Because
sure.
you're-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're about to bill out, you're about to do your ticket sales, right, within the next couple of weeks.
Yep,
So
yep.
you probably need some idea of what the lodging tax calculation is gonna be in order to bill that out.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I did see you had 800 campsites in the lease for the Rocky Grass. What?
Campers.
It says campsites in here.
It does?
Yes.
Didn't say that.
Oh, no, it doesn't. It says overnight camping site sufficient to
800 campers.
maximum 8, yeah, sorry. Didn't freak you out. So, okay, so I was gonna ask the same question to, make sure you nail down a number prior, so we don't have the whole discussion next year again.
And Brian could probably speak to why it's Wednesday for Rocky Grass versus Thursday for folks. But-
Yeah, we're just trying to spread out the initial crush of lineups and just people coming to town. So for Rocky Grass, with there being 4 different campgrounds, 3 of those open on Thursday, so we thought we'd try to spread this out by having at least one of them open not on Thursday morning, so hence the Wednesday timing for that. So I know that there've been issues with businesses in town when everything happened on Thursday morning, it was just too much. So we're gonna try to spread that out in a day.
Any other comments? Questions? Is there a motion?
Make a comment first. This probably will result in a slight reduction in revenue overall to the town from the actual use of Orange House and Park. But on the other hand, there are some, besides the monetary benefits to the town of continuing for another 3 days of control, there are also some hard to quantify benefits of town residents and out-of-town visitors being able to use the park under normal circumstances. Because we get during the festivals, a lot of people coming in, oh, I didn't know it was closed. It's hard to tell everybody that it's going to be closed to non-residents. And so I think you have to factor that in as well. And I think it's a reasonable compromise, and I'm glad the staff on the planet were able to work it out. And as the staff said, recognize that Planet Bluegrass does do a lot of important community support activities. Grave to the Grave was a fantastic success. You know, we struggle with a small amount of community support from our fund here, but we as a town wouldn't contribute as much as, for example, that Leaf earned from Grave to the Grave. And so I think approving things like this to give recognition to the bluegrass in the town, have been good neighbors, and we appreciate what they've done for the town and its residents.
Is there a motion?
I would move that we approve the lease as proposed by staff.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
So are we doing both?
No, we could,
One
we
at
have
a
to do
time?
one at a time.
Oh,
Okay.
the Rocky Grass lease.
Okay, I'll call for the vote. All right, that is approved, 7-0. Go on to the next one. The same situation, I think we've had the same report. Is there a motion on the second resolution?
I'll move to approve resolution 2018-94.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
What was the second, Mike?
Call for the vote. Who's doing it? It made you wait a long time, but we got you there. All right.
Nice. Thanks for turning this around so quickly on our schedule. We really appreciate him and the lawyer's work. And
Yeah, you guys did a great job.
Thanks.
We had an extra week in October, so
Good plan.
All right, thank you guys.
Congrats, November.
All right. Next item is Resolution 2018-95 for amending the Meadow Park Phase 2 Master Plan Recovery Project. Another report from staff on that.
Which one is this?
95. Middle Park Phase 2 Master Plan.
Oh, it's really Tracy's like.
Where did she go? She was here the whole night.
Well, I can speak to it. I mean, it's really Tracy's.
97's first.
Did I skip them? Did I skip something? No.
No, you're correct.
But the
You're doing
96
95, right?
She waited this whole time. Kim, would you tell me how you do that?
95.
So I can kind of speak to this issue, I guess. So we're currently trying to seek reimbursement from FEMA on the Ripley project, which, if you may remember, is one of the earliest projects the town did for Laverne, now Laverne Johnson Park. Because it was early in the cycle of the town, it was kind of plagued with numerous problems in the way the contract was administered. When it has been submitted for reimbursement, the state who oversees the FEMA reimbursement has pointed out the numerous problems with this contract. And so both this resolution and the one that follows this are kind of an attempt to fix some of those issues. One being basically raising, the first one you have here, raising the contract amount to account for the settlement agreement that the Board of Trustees already approved. One of the problems we found with the state was that they didn't know how to basically treat the settlement agreement, what it was in context. They only see it as part of the contract price as a whole. And so in order to incorporate that settlement amount into the contract, we had to raise the amount of the contract. And so this first resolution is kind of an attempt to raise the contract amount in order to incorporate that settlement, so it may be reimbursed for the amount the town expended as a result of the settlement agreement. And that's really what this first one is about. We also attached, as a part of your packet, a memorandum kind of explaining the history to some degree of the Ripley contract and the history of the settlement, because the settlement is somewhat confusing to the state because it doesn't spell out very clearly how it was arrived at, which is important for reimbursement purposes. And so we try to recreate some of that history, talking to the past attorney and talking to town staff, in order to help the state understand how that settlement was arrived at and why the numbers add up. And that's really what we're asking the board to do on this first resolution, is to approve the increase in contract price in order to get the reimbursement.
All right, any questions on the presentation?
What is the state saying at this point? What's their position, if you will?
Well, they're fine, they're okay, they just want the, us to submit our final request for reimbursement on it, which, what makes it somewhat confusing is the settlement agreement was a few $100s more than the actual cost owed to them, because they just rounded it up when we went to negotiations. And so that's what makes it kind of confusing, but they're okay, they're just waiting for us to submit the final.
We see the proper documentation.
And they want this with it.
When it was submitted before just the settlement agreement, they didn't know what it was and, why the numbers didn't add up. And So now we're trying to, kind of recreate that history with this memorandum and then also with the resolution here before you.
Yeah, because, oh, go ahead, no, I'm sorry.
So this is a clarification
Yes.
then,
Correct.
that they're expecting.
We're not expending any additional money as part of
No, we are
this.
not spending
All we're
any.
doing is trying to incorporate that settlement into the contract so that basically all the numbers make sense for the state.
This is just going back and fixing with documentation,
Well,
things we approved. in
Because we
prior
brought the
meetings.
settlement agreement to the board and you guys approved it.
Correct.
It's just now, it's the paperwork that follows.
Right.
Is there a motion to approve resolution 2018-95?
Sorry.
I'll move for approval of 2018-95.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. Okay. Similarly, is there a motion to approve resolution 2018-97?
Can I speak to one additional
Oh, sure, go ahead, sorry.
point on this? Yeah, this one's closely related to the one we just passed, but it's kind of a different problem. Under what we're trying to approve here is various amounts for essentially change orders or add services to the contract. Some of those did not have proper authorization to be expended. However, the money was expended and it was reimbursed by the state. So we don't have a reimbursement issue per se, we do have a clawback issue potentially, where because it wasn't properly authorized, that a future auditor could say that we shouldn't have spent that money and the town could be on the hook for it. And so our legal advice would be to retroactively authorize those expenditures, given that they already have been reimbursed and expended.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
I'll move to approve resolution 2018-97.
Second.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote. And it's approved 7-0. The next item is just basically, we're not gonna have discussion tonight, but just to kind of give the direction if we want to move forward with the legislative procedures and social media policy. We just need to give definitive direction to bring that to us at the next agenda. We kind of did.
I'm not gonna repeat my comments, but I think we're in too much detail at the workshop session, but the two things I would emphasize are with respect to the social media policy, let's be very careful about the definitions and really would like us to focus on making sure that we don't create problems in trustees in whatever capacity being able to convey to the public information that's in the public record. We shouldn't take anything that now would be subject to an open records request and make it problematic for a trustee to put that in a letter to the editor of the newspaper, mention it in a phone call to somebody, put it on social media, whatever form you might want to communicate that. We need to focus on making sure what's public record now remains public record. And with respect to the legislative procedures, I think we need to spell out the procedure by which trustees could request things to be put on the agenda. Right now, it recognizes that you can do that by majority vote, but doesn't say how. And as we talked about in the workshop, I'd like for it to specifically say how.
Any other comments? Everybody's just like,
So we would basically get videos too on there.
is everybody kind of in favor of moving these forward?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next item is the budget. I'm really fearful about us getting through this tonight.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We actually have a lengthy executive session, probably.
Yeah, that's true.
One topic. Here, I'm just gonna throw the option out there. I know we need, what's our drop dead? We had a week buffer, correct?
We do.
Or a meeting buffer, I should say. It's the board's, I mean, the other option is we could have a special meeting and spend time on this. The other thing is that we'll know tomorrow whether the one amendment passes, which would add 70,000. You take 70,000 out right now, and general fund is in the red. I don't know if we can fix this tonight.
Would there be
With the
any
time we have.
availability for the board, maybe like on Friday?
This Friday?
No, not during the day, okay. Monday night is planning commission. If we met early on Monday?
So,
No. Or 5?
I am out
I am
all next week
solid.
except for Monday, so that's the only day I could meet.
So we need to do it this week if we're going to.
Wednesday.
The 19th is
I'm out
Thanksgiving
Monday,
week,
Tuesday,
just to keep that in
Wednesday.
mind, and we have several public hearings
I know,
scheduled for that night.
I would like to try to find a time we could do and
This Wednesday?
talk through it and then,
Yeah, I'm just really worried about the hour we have already,
Yeah.
just
and
our
it's,
ability to kind of really do
the
this
time
right
change is
at this
already
point.
11.
I'm sorry, Anna, to make you
that's all right.
wait
Oh,
all night.
I'm sorry.
Have you been here all night, or did you go
And
home?
tomorrow's your
There's no
birthday.
point.
I went home for everybody.
Your birthday's on election day.
It's happening tomorrow, so she's off tomorrow, she's good.
Wednesday?
So could we find a time maybe that we can meet
This week?
this week at
Trustee
5:30?
Carvis is asking about Wednesday.
What about Wednesday? Is that enough notice to the town, to everybody?
Is that enough notice for
We
you?
need 24 hours notice.
I could do Wednesday night, if that would work for
Let
others.
me look.
Wednesday?
This whole week is bad for
You
Wednesday.
could?
I can do this, I may not be able to see, I've got that
So
out
you
there.
could give us your.
I can listen. I can do Wednesday.
You have to commit it to memory before your appointment.
One suggestion I might make is, I had some questions that were like mathematical stuff, could we submit those to Anna and then?
Sure, absolutely.
You could say something.
Yes, that's very helpful, actually.
What do we have for a workshop on the 19th?
We are, the overlay district.
Mhm. Which the public hearing, we already moved to the 3rd.
Yeah, I think you motioned.
I did, but, I mean, we could workshop it on the 3rd.
We have to
Yeah.
workshop it and then pass it, and I'm worried there's so many changes that they may not be able to get them ready. The other thing is these are, have to be done with public hearings as well. So I don't know, just, I mean, we can hash through it, it's just gonna be a late night.
Would Wednesday work for others or not?
How many
Not
could do
Thursday,
Wednesday?
works.
We can get a corner
I
on here
mean,
Wednesday.
it depends on-
Or give us
Submit the
comments on your items
comments.
that's,
I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a discussion.
I can try for Wednesday. It's best I got. Wednesday night.
The reason I'm throwing out Wednesday is personally, we get it done, give staff time to digest.
Yeah.
And
Get it
I
out
hate
to
to
the-
push them like we have in the years past with all the floods up to the end, and trying to alleviate
We could
that
treat it
issue.
as a workshop, and then still put it on the 19th for approval.
sure,
Can we do that?
Sure.
That way you'd still get a crack at it. when you can't join
This
us.
wasn't set up for approval anyways, it was
No, this was
discussion.
just a
Oh,
discussion.
sure, but I mean, I guess it would,
So-
Are we talking at night or in the day?
Wednesday, are we talking
I'd have to
And-
be evening.
like 5:30 or later?
No, like anytime.
I think the UEB has this room 4:30 to 6.
So we could do 6?
6.
6.
So we're gonna have a budget workshop. Does that work for you, Anna?
Yeah.
Budget workshop, 6 o'clock, Wednesday the 7th.
We should get a motion to continue to do a
I
day
mean, that's
service.
what we're looking at. We won't have to continue anything, so
I
it's
guess
an item.
is 6:30 better for Wendy? Because you said you had some stuff possibly going on.
Well, I'm working at the site all day Wednesday, and I'm supposed to clean John's well service on Wednesday night. So, I mean, I might be able to figure out something for
What about Thursday?
Yeah, it should be
Thursday
fine.
better?
I should be able to get through this hour if you were gonna do it in this meeting.
habitat thing at budget home.
Thursday?
I mean, I'm just so booked for the next 2 weeks, it's ridiculous.
Well, is there a time during, if trustee Miller can't be here either way, is there another time people prefer than Wednesday night?
I can't do it Wednesday afternoon.
Friday night is like the only time I'm available.
Friday night budget.
Ooh, yeah.
Friday night budget, right?
Is there wine?
I mean, I can do Saturday.
Yeah.
Probably town hall.
I mean, I'm flexible
I'm
this
called
week, I
Brave to
just,
the
I'm
grave,
not
too.
available much next week. so-
Saturdays.
I'm
I'm
out
not-
of town
I'm
Monday,
available
Tuesday,
Thursday through
Wednesday
Sunday.
next week.
Okay, Wednesday at 6?
Is there a motion for, what are we continuing, just this
We
discussion?
don't have to just,
Man,
I mean, you don't have to technically, but
it was just
there's
more
no,
discussion.
there's no action item.
No
on it.
action, I mean, yeah.
call a special workshop.
I mean, I think if it's just, we're not gonna take any action on it, so everybody would still get to review and
Yeah,
submit
I'll-
any
I'll
changes.
just email some stuff that I'm,
Do you want me here for that?
Or I can, yeah.
Here's the other thing I would say is if we do it Wednesday, I would ask, could staff get the changes out early so that it's not just coming with a packet, so everybody has more time. So if there are additional things that the folks who can't be here for could send back their comments and changes to staff, so you could be prepared for the meeting.
And they'll give us during the day on the 7th if the election results change items to add or subtract to the budget.
Okay, well, I appreciate people's flexibility. It was just, this agenda kind of blew up on us. And, I think our executive session tonight is an important one, so. All right, we'll pick up the budget again when we have fresher minds.
Okay, so are we planning
6
to
o'clock
have a
Wednesday.
workshop at 6 o'clock Wednesday or 5:30? 6 o'clock?
6.
Okay.
Try 6.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I mean, yeah, I'll do my best to be
And
here,
then
that's
if you-
all I got. It's the best I
Sorry.
have, that's okay.
I'm playing bridge.
Okay, we do have one item that was removed from consent, item number 1. Trustee Waugh.
Okay, I just have a quick one on this. So at the very bottom of the revolving loan fund program rules and standards, I just wanted to see if we could add a name of a person to inquire or apply, because it's all just generic Lions.
Probably.
And I'm just afraid somebody's gonna pick up the phone and not know what they're talking about. If they just call the main number and say, can I have an application for the revolving loan fund? So I'd just like the name of a person that they
A
could.
position.
Yeah, or a position, that would be
Sure.
fine.
Sure, that makes sense.
That's all I have.
And then, we did get the application, Brandon and I got it wrapped up about 3-ish today, so too late to get new bags, but we'll have to send that out too.
Okay, great.
And I actually have a couple questions too on this
Sure.
one. So in the first section of who cannot apply, what is the wording of that? I guess, so if anyone was ever involved with the connection with the implementation of the program, does that mean that we would never, ever be able to apply? So Trustee Miller wanted to apply for her business at some point, or anybody who's owned a business wanted to apply?
Is the current,
Just-
the current board members and current trustees who we're talking, I think, let's pull it
So
up.
10 years from now, I'm just saying.
No, yeah, that was
Just
not
the
the
way it's
intent.
worded, I think it just kind
That
of
was not
like,
the intent.
okay, you're forever banned from maybe to apply to this one.
That was definitely not.
Who cannot apply? Okay.
I would just say, I think your wording is good, as just anyone who is in the position to exercise decision-making functions in connection with the program is ineligible under the program. So it really should be people who are in a decision-making capacity at the time the loan application is made.
Yep.
I think that was probably the intent.
That was definitely the intent. I mean, the
Okay.
idea was that just because you're not on one of these people, but you're somehow involved in the implementation of the program. There's just people who are advising the board in informal ex parte capacity right now.
Well, or
And
I
so-
appointed the member, so it makes sense
Right.
that I should not have the
Yeah.
ability to apply right now, but.
So that was the idea, is that you may be involved in implementing, you may be one of the listed parties.
Right. And then, were the ineligible activities, are they based on criteria by the revolving loan fund, or were these developed by the committee?
These were based in part upon the USDA requirements.
Okay.
But also in part from what the revolving loan fund put forward. But I can tell you the majority of them come from USDA requirements. For example, construction is the key one here, and that's for Bacon-Davis reasons and for NEPA reasons. It's the reason why construction is not allowed. Marijuana is pretty self-explanatory, there's federal funds. And yeah, most of these came from the USDA requirements or things that, the revolving loan fund decided was appropriate.
It was the two other activities, kind of like the catch-alls. I was just kind of curious. Those are very subjective, and it seems to give the committee just arbitrary control to say, they just don't like your project, I guess. And if that's the intent, I guess, But
The
it's
intent
hard
is
for someone to apply and know if they're gonna have a
right.
chance.
The intent is that you're never able to catch all the things that are just not appropriate for the expenditure of town funds. For future RLF may decide that a sexually oriented business may not be appropriate for these types of funds, would not otherwise be covered in the USDA requirements. So an example. I cannot speak to all the various things that could fall into the category, but there certainly are things.
Okay, yeah, I just was curious about, is their request to have that kind of language in there, or?
Somewhat, I think my suggestion as well, considering that you never know what you're gonna get, these kind of things, and there may be things that may be inappropriate under current federal or future federal law, that, we did not envision in either the language we pulled from the USDA or from what we brainstormed as part of the meetings.
Okay.
Mayor, a couple.
Trustee Browning?
Yeah, couple of questions and comments on this. I know that the eligible activities, it says include but not limited to, but one thing that to me was noticeably missing was replacement of inventory. And in fact, the initial loans that we did right after the flood, that was probably the primary purpose, was at least a couple of restaurants had lost their inventory during the flood because lost power and all the food spoiled, and that was their biggest need in getting back into business, was to replace inventory that they hadn't been able to sell and generate cash flow. So I think you could do that because it's included but not limited to, but I just wondered if that might not be.
That was one of the things we specifically were thinking about, is the working capital loans, what we've been calling it, is including purchase of inventory.
Okay. I think you could do it with that language, but that was probably the number one thing that it was used, that the original loans were made for, and I sure don't want to see it excluded. The other question is under a paragraph called Terms for Loans. It says the applicant must have a Town of Lyons business license and operate the business in the 80540 primary planning area. I think we can only probably issue business licenses within town limits, right? So seemed to be a little bit of inconsistency there about could they operate a business outside the, in the planning area outside the Town of Lyons.
Right.
The way I would read that is they got to have a Town of Lyons business license. They got to be in town, and I really think they should be in town, because one of the reasons you would do this is to keep businesses operating and employing employees and generating sales tax and that property tax and that sort of thing. So I really think it should focus on in town, and the way I read that, it does. You've got to have a town of license. It's a Town of Lyons business license.
I think the RLF was open to the idea of businesses in the planning area, not just in the town. But I think if the board wishes to change that to be just the town, but I think you're right. The idea was, and this is part of us pulling it together at the last minute, was that if you're within the Town of Lyons, you needed a Town of Lyons business license. Obviously, it wouldn't be applicable outside of the Town of Lyons.
There's something in the introductory paragraph to the last line says the businesses wishing to expand their business within the Town of Lyons. So with that reference, I also think if you limit it to loans within the Town of Lyons, maybe that gives a business that's in the planning area but not in the town some incentive to annex to make them eligible for
just a point of clarification. Is that for a business license, like if a roofing company comes to put a roof from Longmont, to put a roof on my house, they have to have a Town of Lyons business license. Yeah. So you can have a situation in which someone has a Town of Lyons business license, but they don't do much business here. They're primarily doing business lots of other places. So I think that clarification is actually appropriate.
Okay, you're probably right.
That was exactly the intent of that, yeah.
Okay, is there a motion on this?
So just to be clear, so keep it as it is or change it?
I think with the first paragraph about expand their business within the Town of Lyons, I really think these ought to be limited to businesses within the Town of Lyons, not in the planning area.
Is that the will of the entire board? Or?
Why don't we get a motion and then we can offer amendments?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I'll move to approve of resolution 2018-92.
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion or amendments?
Yes, I would propose an amendment to fifth bullet point on, under terms for loans, to just simply say the applicant must have a town of Lyons business license and operate the business in the town of Lyons. Yes. And strike the words 80540 primary planning area.
Is there a second for the amendment?
Could we have?
Let's see if it gets a second first, and then I'm gonna say the motion dies for lack of second. Any further amendments? I would just move to amend the first section, or the section under who cannot apply, to remove the words the implementation. And I would leave it, give staff some leeway to change the wording to reflect the fact that it means for people who are currently able to impact the decision-making responsibilities. Is that a motion? That was a motion.
I'll second that.
That's
I
weird
got
when
a
I make
little lost,
motions.
sorry.
Yeah, totally.
I think all you have to do is take out with the implementation and it's fine.
I think you can probably do it by just taking.
That's what he just said.
Okay, I couldn't quite read the whole thing. Okay, is there any further discussion on the motion? For the amendment? I'll call for the vote on the amendment. It's approved 7-0. Any further amendments?
I would move to amend the section ineligible businesses activities to remove the last bullet that says other activities that the town of Lyons may identify as inappropriate for the RFL program. Just because I think it's redundant, because it already says includes but is not limited to, and I think we can just leave it at that.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I was thinking that those statements actually were slightly different. Let me get back to it. So, not limit, and the reason for staying with it for a second is giving the committee something to fall back on in a denial. And the kind of the strong statement as you can for them. So the reason we're not doing it is because we identified it as inappropriate for the RLF program.
I think the amendment's a good amendment because we talked before about not having the board in particular involved in business by business decisions of whether a loan should be made or not. And if the town of Lyons has to decide what's inappropriate for the RLF program, then I think the board has to decide that. And I really think it's best to minimize the board's involvement in approving or denying loans for particular businesses.
Go ahead, yeah.
My interpretation that this applies to the committee, not the board of trustees. Because the committee's making the decisions, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And it's really, it was to help enable the committee to have something to quote in if there's a denial. That's all.
I actually think I agree with you on that, now that I'm thinking it through, because we had a discussion about how we'd have to, kind of come out of executive session and state why we didn't approve a loan for a business. So this is a good phrase to use without coming out and saying exactly, without, harming the business in some way by using some other language. So I might rescind my amendment, withdraw my amendment.
Would the
Does the
second
second have to withdraw?
Yeah.
No, just the original proponent in the motion.
Oh, okay, you don't have to say. Okay, it's withdrawn?
Yep, withdrawn.
Okay, the amendment is withdrawn. All right, any further discussion on our amendments? All right, I will call for the vote on the resolution as amended with the language as amended. All right, that's approved, 7-0. Thank you. All right.
Thanks for your work.
I will. Trustee reports. Anybody have anything burning, or would you like to send those via email, or just get them? It's the desire of the board. Move on?
Move on.
Okay, is there a motion to go into executive session?
I move we go into executive session.
I move to go.
Right, let's go.
You can second it right
Executive-
now.
Executive session pursuant to CRS sections 24-6424A and 24-6424E for purposes of discussing a proposed lease of property by Paul Frizzy, DBA Western Stone Appliance LLC from the town of Lyons and determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators regarding the proposed lease of property by Paul Frizzy, DBA Western Stone from the town of Lyons. I further move to reconvene the board meeting at the conclusion of the executive session for the purpose of going into another executive session and taking any actions deemed necessary.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? No.